Welcome back to Northern Perspective, everyone. I'm CIpher.
And I'm Fox. We were going to record a normal episode tonight, but given what happened today, we felt it was necessary to have a special live stream.
As many of you probably know, Mr. Morv and Miss Dutt from the software development firm Bottler appeared before committee today to present their facts and observations that related to their pilot project for the Canada Border Services Agency and its relation to the ArriveScam scandal. If you're watching this after the fact, we suggest that you watch our expose on the ArriveScam app, which can be found in the description. Now, please note, unlike our normal live stream, we will not be meeting in Discord after the stream or responding to questions aside from Super Chats, as we anticipate the stream to last approximately 2.5 hours, and we want to get through this as seamlessly as possible.
But don't worry, we're going to be appearing on Clyde Do Something's live stream tomorrow. We'll be there around 10:30 Eastern Time. I believe he starts at between 9 and 9:30 Eastern Time, so check that out tomorrow. And we'll also be doing our regular live stream on Sunday. So without further ado, let's get into the hearing.
Alrighty.
Adopted by the committee on Monday, October 17, 2022. The committee is meeting on the study of the ArriveCAN app. Just a reminder to keep your microphones away from your earpieces, as it causes feedback and potential injury to our valued translators. And just a reminder, today we have an absolute hard cap at 5:45 p.m., not a moment after, colleagues. We're going to start with witness statements from our witnesses, Ms. Dutt and Mr. Morv. Who is going first? Ms. Dutt, please go ahead for 5 minutes.
Merci. Monsieur le Président,
Thank you. Mr. Chair, honorable members, thank you for inviting Bottler to testify before the mighty Ogo.
Canadian public safety company focused on misconduct and legal violation detection using artificial intelligence. We believe that the law is a public good, and our vision is to empower citizens with equal access to the legal system in layperson's terms. Our mission is to fight misconduct one incident at a time. Bottler's original technology was in the form of a chatbot. Today, Bottler's technology is built upon GPT-4 and ChatGPT, which I believe you're familiar with. And any individual who has faced or witnessed misconduct can visit our website at bottler.com and get an impartial assessment from our AI for free. Bottler educates the user on laws and legal concepts that are specifically applicable to their respective situation to empower them to take the next steps to enforce their rights. In 2017, before AI was the mainstream staple that it is today, Bottler was the first company in the world to apply AI to the detection of sexual misconduct, which was inspired by my own harrowing, traumatic experience with a workplace stalker. And our story was covered extensively by national and international media alike, including but not limited to the Globe and Mail, the New York Times, Washington Post, BBC, and Vice, to name a few, totaling over 3 billion press impressions. Bottler's work did not go unnoticed with the Government of Canada. In 2018, I was invited by then Minister Baines to address the G7 on Bottler's innovative work and discuss our approach towards AI and the law. And I used the opportunity with the G7 ministers to present Bottler's manifesto for a future in which we could provide our AI to every single person so that they would have equal access to the justice system. In 2019, Bottler won a competitive RFP with the Legal Aid Directorate of the Department of Justice Canada. And through this initiative, we became the first AI in the world regulated to provide legal violation detections directly to citizens. In recognition of this momentous achievement, in 2020, I was recognized on the Forbes 30 Under 30 Law and Policy list, and I was the only Canadian on the list. As two international students who came here with big ambitions, Amir and I have dedicated ourselves to building Bottler into a venture that can truly impact our fellow citizens' lives for the better and make Canada proud. And while Justice and the Legal Aid Directorate were giving us a seat at the table and Bottler was going from strength to strength, there was another faction within the Government of Canada that was also noticing us, but for completely different reasons. This small but powerful faction, spearheaded by the Canada Border Services Agency, had identified the perfect rationalization, incentive, and opportunity in Bottler. And if you're familiar with it, you might recognize these three as components of the triangle of fraud. With the Auditor General's Fall 2019 report on the culture of deeply entrenched workplace harassment at the CBSA, countless sexual harassment cases at the agency, and the impending implementation of Bill C-65 to prevent harassment in federal workplaces, the CBSA had identified the perfect rationalization to kill three birds with one stone. With over 300,000 federal public servants covered by Bill C-65, and Bottler's existing technology as the only solution on the market that was available to provide full compliance with the bill, the CBSA had the perfect incentive to sell Bottler's enterprise licenses to the entire government of Canada, using their own procurement vehicles, which would, quote, allow them to add infinite amount of funds to the price to be executed through their usual suspects. My personal profile as a female immigrant entrepreneur who refused to be a victim of sexual misconduct and transformed tripling trauma into something that attracted extensive goodwill from Justice Canada, the public, and media alike, provided the perfect opportunity for an optics operation that could funnel tens of millions of taxpayer dollars. We later learned that this was executed through a set-aside for Indigenous business contract, which is yet another example of the monetization and theft using trauma of marginalized communities.
Okay, so that was a lot. Just want to pause it there because she really went over a lot there and slid from her personal resume into what was going on very quickly, and it's easy to miss a lot. But the piece that you really just need to focus on is this. So they were talking about the fact that they were building this app that would help you identify if you're being harassed and what to do about it, which is great. And when this was presented to the Canada Border Services Agency, they saw a way to virtue signal using this app, and all of a sudden everyone was interested. What did she say at the end there? Oh, it's been a long day. Let me just back this up, folks. I lost it. I'll pick it up again. This is where she gets into some of the details, and pay attention to what she says until the end of her opening statement here.
To seal the deal at the Privy Council, this faction used me and our Sacred Citizens Initiative with the Department of Justice as their false flag operation. But they had one fatal flaw in their grand scheme. Bottler was there on a mission, which was to prevent, detect, and combat misconduct, and that's exactly what we did. We started submitting reports against this very faction. In response, instead of protecting Canadian taxpayers and their hard-earned dollars, the government machine, including the CBSA, PSPC, TDS, and other individuals, including legal services, mobilized to bury our reports, to obstruct justice, and all in Canada's name.
Okay, a couple things there. Government people love using acronyms. So when she says CBSA, that is Canada Border Services Agency. PSPC, very important acronym. That's the Public Services Procurement Vehicle. Okay? So every time you purchase something within the Government of Canada, that has to go through PSPC. It also has to go through, to a degree, Treasury Board, and that's TBS, Treasury Board Services. Treasury Board Services is probably one of the most influential agencies in the government, but you never hear about it because it's very boring, but it's where all of the money comes out of. And I remembered what I was going to say before. So one of the important things that she said was that all of the money that Bottler was to get was actually coming out of a contract that was awarded based on the Indigenous procurement rules, which is a initiative by the government to ensure that they're actually providing businesses that are run by Indigenous people essentially first opportunity to get some of this business. So they've committed a certain percent of the spend from the entire government to Indigenous communities, which is a commendable type of initiative because you're targeting businesses that may not otherwise have a competitive advantage. So that's great. The problem is that the money went into, if you recall, Dalian, who is technically owned by an Indigenous entity, but then was paid out from that entity to non-Indigenous businesses. So it's completely alienating the whole point of the initial initiative, which was to give money to Indigenous businesses to allow them to thrive in Canada. So a lot going on here.
In December 2022, in the same time that President O'Gorman said that they were debating sending our reports to the RCMP, my emails were hacked, and every record of an email that Christian Firth had sent me was mysteriously deleted. And we watched and waited patiently for someone to do the right thing and act on our reports, but instead we were heartbroken as they lied. They lied to us, they lied to you at OGO, they lied to Parliament, and they lied to Canadian taxpayers. So sitting here today, I can assure you one thing. Systemic government corruption existed before Bottler. Systemic government corruption tried to manifest itself through Bottler, but now, because of Bottler, systemic government corruption will be annihilated. Thank you so much.
All right. So I liked what she said up until that last bit, which came off a little virtue signaling.
But you know what? I think it's very commendable that her and her partner are trying to put a stop to this. I mean, they did not just come to committee with this now. Like, this has been in the process since, was it 2001 that they've been trying to blow the whistle?
2021.
Oh, sorry, 2021 that they've been trying to blow the whistle on this corruption within our government. So it's taking these two Canadian citizens who pretty much got fleeced by Christian Firth and his companies to go to the government and blow this whole thing wide open.
Yeah. I hope that's the last of the kind of cringy lingo. But outside of that, I love their commitment. I love that they're not going to be bullied. And I love that they're standing up for what they believe is right. And they believe that taxpayer money should be spent appropriately because we're all paying for it. We're all paying more than enough taxes. So it better be spent properly. I see your question there, Mary C. Dunford. It's hard to know what that is. Send us an email at northernperspective00@gmail.com. Tell us what amount you sent, and we'll take a look and we'll get back to you. Thanks. Anyhow, let's get those likes over 200, please. Like Daphne is asking nicely. Don't let her not ask nicely. You won't like it. So, I'm just kidding. Daphne's an absolute treasure of Northern Perspective. Thank you. Anyway, get those likes over 200. Remember, this pushes this stream out so more people can see it. Anyone who missed the committee meeting earlier today, we want everyone to see this. This is going to be a very important day in this government's history. Mark my words, it's going to be a very important day, so we need everyone to see it. Thank you so much. Now we're at 233. Let's get those likes up to 300. Let's go.
Thank you. Mr. Morv, please, for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chair, honorable committee members, I'm a programmer and a software architect with a focus on security. As part of my expertise, I study systems to identify vulnerabilities in order to mitigate their potential exploitation. In November 2019, we were approached by the CBSA through their operative, Christian Firth of GC Strategies. Since then, I have been closely studying and documenting numerous vulnerabilities that we have uncovered in Canada's procurement regime. We have also witnessed these vulnerabilities systematically be exploited by the government officials in the highest level of public service. From our experience, the primary objective of this exploitation is to funnel tax dollars and public funds into private entities that lie outside of public purview. Professional services contracts, which are currently the subject of several committee studies and will cost taxpayers almost $20 billion this year, is at the is the prime target of this exploitation. I refer to one such scheme as ghost contracting, which we have observed with Bottler and ArriveCAN, which is the current study of the committee. For ArriveCAN, GC Strategies was a prime contractor who received significant commissions to then subcontract the work to third-party companies who were the ghost contractors. Based on documents tabled to this committee, GC Strategies claimed that the employees of these ghost contractors were the individual named in the table task authorizations, or TAs. These TAs were used to bill the government. As these ghost contractors are not subject to direct government purview, there is no way to validate that the named individuals actually performed the work, or even they were aware that they've been named on these task authorizations. Also, this is assuming basically that these are real individuals with valid security clearances and not fake profile created for these TAs. In Bottler's case, there were 3 levels of contracting. GC Strategies operated as the ghost contractor. Myself and Richika identified personally as subcontractor. Our identities were used without our knowledge or consent by Coradix and Dalian, entities that we have never heard of. Another critical vulnerability that I would like to bring your attention to is the fact that Bottler worked on the CBSA project with no contractual or legal agreement in place with the agency or with any of the subcontractors or contractors that were involved. Despite this, we were freely given access to non-public information by the CBSA, and Bottler has full legal rights to all information we have collected for this misconduct case. Now, imagine the exposure that Canada would face if a bad actor is legally given access to sensitive information through similar means, and the dangers this would pose to our country. If procurement rules have been respected, any resource name on a project should be aware of it. They should provide their written consent or sign a contractual agreement, and they should sign an NDA. However, the biggest vulnerability that I would like to draw your attention to is the fact that these contractors are openly engaged in various criminal activities. They openly commit frauds on the government by promising influence and requesting material benefit in exchange. One thing that we have consistently observed with both our justice work and interactions with public safety is that an act of misconduct rarely happens in isolation. It is always almost symptomatic of a larger existence and tolerance of misconduct. Individuals engaged in such conduct are also prime targets of exploitation and extortion. In our interactions with GC Strategies, Mr. Firth routinely boasted that he and his friends, senior government officials with contracting authorities, have dirt on each other, essentially guaranteeing silence through mutually assured destruction.
Okay, well, I can't go any further without thanking Humble Tracker for another 10 Northern Perspective memberships. Thank you so much, Humble Tracker. It's Merry Christmas early to all of those people. So please give Humble Tracker the love she deserves if you were gifted a membership. Just to explain how that works. And Jerry Savoy gifted another 10 memberships. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So when you gift memberships, what that does is it gives 10 random memberships. What YouTube does, it uses an algorithm and then automatically assigns them based on your activity with Northern Perspective. So we have no control over it. It's all YouTube. So congratulations to the lottery that people are winning on those. So thank you very much. 2, glad to see the likes up at 315. Can we get to 400? That's the next milestone. Now, one thing that Amir Morv talked about was something he calls a ghost contractor. So if you recall, and if you saw our previous video on the expose, we laid this out. And what this essentially is when a government awards a contract to a vendor to do work, or really any organization, they sign a contract based on a statement of work or an SOW with that contractor, and then they issue a purchase order to that contractor, and then everything is documented and legal. And thank you so much for the $50 super chat, Humble Tracker. Much love to Fox and CIpher. Much love to you back, Humble Tracker. We absolutely love you. So what's supposed to happen is that vendor is now supposed to execute that statement of work on the deliverables agreed. Well, what has been happening is that especially Dalian and Coridex, who function as essentially one company because they are located in the same building, in the same office, and use the same people, aside from the executives at the top. So what they will then do is, because they're just a staffing firm, they will then subcontract out to another vendor, GC Strategies. They are a staffing vendor. They are the ghost contractor because they have no direct contract with the original vendor. Humble Tracker again with another 20 memberships. Thank you so much. So much. And again, everyone give Humble Tracker the love because she's giving you free memberships for a month. Thank you so much. So the problem is that GC Strategies will then take that SOW and then subcontract it out again. And then what happens is the person or agency that is actually assigned the work has no contract at all. And because they have no contract, they actually have no legal liability versus the government. And the government maintains full legal liability. So they may get all of these sensitive documents, sensitive access to do work and all of this stuff. And they could just walk off with it and they're not in breach of contract. So if you get a bad actor, as Amir says, that's really bad news for the Canadian government. Never mind the fact that these contracts are inflated because each of those staffing agencies that is passing it along and subcontracting it out takes a cut for doing absolutely no work. Okay, back to the stream.
While external contractors are engaged in misconduct and do the actual dirty work, I want to emphasize that their conduct would not be possible without backing from factions within the government. At least in our case, their conduct was fully directed by this faction within the government that we have encountered. Unfortunately, once we began reporting our findings, the government machine mobilized to bury Bottler's reports and protect this corruption. The most shocking response we received came from Public Services and Procurement Canada, with the involvement of their legal services. PSPC stated that Canada has determined that no rules were broken. This is while the same allegations were under our CMP investigation. When the government body that has been entrusted with overseeing and spending our tax dollars decides to selectively enforce their own rules, whether willfully or through sheer negligence, this is dangerous. Now, the bigger question is what else PSPC had turned a blind eye to in the expenditure of tens of billions of taxpayer dollars. Thank you.
And thank you, Humble Tracker, again, for yet another 10 Northern Perspective memberships. Just thank you so much for all the love that you've shown our channel. It is deeply appreciated by all involved. Don't make it your mission to give a membership to everyone on the stream. But thank you so much. Your generosity is deeply appreciated by everybody, especially our longtime members. So Amir Morv calling it out as it is, that the government is actively barricading against the accusations of Bottler and what they have actually experienced, observed, and documented. And if you haven't seen this earlier today, just wait. This is nothing.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moore. Ms. Kusi, starting with you with 6 minutes, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Ms. Dutt, and thank you, Mr. Moore, for being here today with us. It's very...
And just so you all know, the different levels in audio, that's not us. That's the sound guys at committee. So unfortunately, we can't do anything about that.
Very harrowing what you are sharing with us, incredibly disturbing. But I'd like Canadians to understand exactly what happened here. So the first question I have for you is, can you please explain to the Canadian public what ghost contracting is?
Contracting is basically a scheme in which a middleman that technically does no work is being added to government contracts without any legal trace. And usually this middleman or the ghost contractor adds significant amount of commission to for their role to be in between, and the money funnels through this entity that they're not legally traceable.
So based upon the testimony that you've shared here today, would GC Strategies fit your definition, the definition you've just given to Canadians as a ghost contractor?
That is correct.
So this company, GC Strategies, which received $11.2 million, in your opinion, is a ghost contractor.
Yes.
Would the other associated companies, Cordix and Dalian, who received a combined total of $4.3 million of Canadian taxpayer money, would you classify that as a ghost contractor, them as ghost contractors?
Well, in particular in Bottler, they were the prime contractors. So I don't have any information whether they're ghost contractors or not, because ghost contractors are untraceable. But Cordix and Dalian essentially hired a ghost contractor. So even though that in our case, they may not be the ghost contractor, they are part of this scheme because they particularly worked with a ghost contractor. They could have easily directly worked with us, but they chose to work with a ghost contractor to funnel the funds through this ghost contractor who was GC Strategies.
And how did this ghost contracting affect you both personally?
Well, our identities have been used without our knowledge or consent on a contract that is set aside for Indigenous business. Unfortunately, our work experiences have been forged, and the value of the contract that we were promised was cut. Random deliverables were assigned to the task authorization that was assigned to this project, and it technically ruined our company because this matter was not something that we could have delegated to someone to investigate. We had to start investigating this matter since January 2021. We had to really operate at the lowest capacity for every other operation of the company and really focus on seeing what's going on and really investigate the matter.
You explained it briefly in your opening statement, but can you please explain again the scope of your project and what you were approached to do, please?
So we essentially, initially, we were approached by the CBSA through GC Strategies to begin a pilot project that was supposed to be implemented within the CBSA. And right after that pilot, the initiation of that pilot project, we were promised that an enterprise licenses of our software will be purchased for the entire government of Canada, which it was a license per user based basically purchase. And that was the
And what was that rate, please?
Sorry?
What is the standard rate for this rate per user?
So our standard pricing for a user per year is $60, and GC Strategies suggested that it will be adding another $28 to that initial pricing. So $78 per user per year for 300,000 employees, which was $23 million per year.
So this was the initial offer that GC Strategies made to you?
Yes, and GC Strategies mentioned that this will be purchased right after the pilot, which the CBSA was supposed to be the agency that the pilot would have been implemented.
And was that the final agreement that you came to, that amount for the project which you were supposed to undertake?
Correct.
Okay. So you completed the work.
Alors, vous avez fait les travaux et vous avez été payé. Non, nous n'avons pas été payés. Nous avons fait le travail, mais nous n'avons pas été rémunérés. D'accord.
They mixed up the translator channel. That's
Quel est le processus
They're gonna
qui a
fix
été
it soon.
suivi après ce travail qui avait été convenu? Bien, au début, pour le projet pilote, nous étions censés recevoir un paiement mensuel.
while this is going
Donc,
on,
le
thank you
projet
very much,
pilote
Humble
devait
Tracker, for
durer 6
another 10
mois,
memberships.
et GC
And
Strategies
welcome
a dit
aboard,
qu'on recevrait
Dan
un
Ragonia,
paiement
to
mensuel
NP
pour le
supporter.
travail.
Welcome to the
Donc,
club.
nous avons commencé le travail. Et avant de commencer les travaux, on nous a présenté cet accord entre GC Strategies et Dalian. Et tout de suite, cela nous a vraiment choqués, mais nous avons continué le travail parce qu'on avait l'impression qu'on pouvait soulever ces enjeux avec l'Agence des services frontaliers. Mais malheureusement, le travail...
Not working.
They realized it now.
Sorry about this. The interpreter was on the wrong channel.
Working.
It's now been corrected.
15 seconds. Anyways, do you mind?
Sure,
wrap
so,
up? It was good timing.
Sure. So we were supposed to receive monthly payments. We never received monthly payments, and payments have been withheld.
Expressed that they would take a cut of what you were being reimbursed.
Yes, the cut was supposed to be $50,000 on the pilot, on top of our cost, which was $350. But at the end, we found that they added another $20,000 on their end, and it was 420.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Morv. Mr. Kuzmirchuk, please, for 6 minutes.
So when I heard this, I was disgusted, I was shocked, but I was also
Angry.
And I'm not going to say excited because excited is the wrong word. I'm not sure what the word is, but
Vindicated.
validated.
Yeah.
Because in our video on the expose, we talked about this, that they were supposed to get 350. GC Strategies came back and said, oh, well, CBSA was really mad when we told them what the price was going to be. So we actually had to forfeit our cut. And so you're only going to get 336,000. I said, I bet GC Strategies kept that money. And that's exactly what Amir said happened. So unfortunately, we're reading the tea leaves of corruption correctly. And I say unfortunately because you wish there wasn't corruption, but it is being laid to bear in front of us.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you so much, Ms. Dutt and Mr. Morv. First and foremost, for bringing to life Bottler AI and applying tech and AI to help root out workplace harassment and misconduct. So I wanted to say thank you so much for bringing this tool to Canada. Subsequently, thank you so much for your work, your diligence in bringing this serious issue to our attention. And thank you so much for your courage in bringing this forward. We received a couple days ago a note from the Royal Canadian Mounted Police that the RCMP is not investigating ArriveCAN. And so they said that the investigation that's being conducted by the RCMP does not pertain to ArriveCAN. I know a lot has been said. I just want to clear up a couple things. Is this about ArriveCAN?
So what you're going to hear from the Liberals, not the NDP, but the Liberals, is a lot of deflection and damage control to try to ensure that the narrative is nothing to do with ArriveCAN.
Because it was their idea. They want to distance themselves as much as possible away from this app that, like, all these companies were just like stealing money from the government, and it's not really from the government; it's from the taxpayers.
Right. And someone had a question before that I caught, and they were saying, what does that mean, allocated for Indigenous businesses? So one of the things that governments sometimes do, not governments, or organizations, and the government is just an organization, is they will purchase a block of hours from a vendor for work to be performed in the future. And then what will happen is when they have a project, they will go to that vendor and they will essentially draw down on those hours. It's almost like a retainer. So what they did with this one particular organization, Dalian, because they are an Indigenous vendor, they're wholly owned by an Indigenous entity, is they gave them a block of money to be drawn down on when they have initiatives in the future. So the government tries to allocate a certain percentage of their purchasing towards Indigenous businesses, just to try to elevate Indigenous people in the workplace and in the economy. That you can debate, one way or the other, whether we should or should not be doing that, but that's what happens. And then the problem is that not in the spirit of that, the company then turned around and gave a portion of that money to a non-Indigenous business without the government's knowledge, or maybe with their knowledge. Who knows?
What do you want to do?
Sure. Well, our work is not about ArriveCAN. Our work is about Bottler. I think the link between Bottler and ArriveCAN is that the same contracts that were used to implement Bottler were used in ArriveCAN. That's the only link. There's no other link between Bottler and ArriveCAN.
Actually,
Okay.
I would add to that. The other link is that they're the same parties, the same contractors that are involved, and the same contracting authorities from the government that are also involved. So there are ties, but to clarify, Bottler directly had no involvement in ArriveCAN.
So the Liberal was trying to say, so this isn't about ArriveCAN, and they're saying, well, technically no, because Bottler isn't related to or had no work to do on ArriveCAN, but the investigation isn't particularly related to ArriveCAN. It's related to the corruption and the collusion and all the other laws that were broken with these vendors, regardless of the project. That's what the investigation's about. Now, ArriveCAN's a part of that because Bottler was paid, what little they were, was paid out of ArriveCAN money. It wasn't paid out of a fund that was allocated for that project. So the Liberals can try as they might, but they're not going to slither away from this not being related to the ArriveCAN project.
Right. So I just want to verify. So CBSA had not contracted Bottler to work on ArriveCAN. This was the pilot for the misconduct, or excuse me, the
Thank you so
workplace
much,
harassment.
Tracker, for the
Is that
$20
correct?
super chat. I'm glad to catch you even if I'm on late to the party. I might miss a few live and uploads. Search and Rescue has me on standby. So cheers and peace. Thank you so much, Humble Tracker. Thanks for coming. And thank you very much to Debbie Clark, $10 super sticker. Tired of the corruption, aren't we all?
Oh, sorry, is that correct? I didn't click my apologies.
Yes, that
Okay, sorry
is
about
correct.
that. Okay, thank you. I wanted to ask, can you tell us, initially when you approached CBSA September of 2021, can you tell us specifically what misconduct you had raised in that initial, when you reached out initially? And I believe it was Mr. Antonio Utano that you had reached out to. Can you specify some of the key misconduct that you had flagged in that initial correspondence?
Sure. So there were allegations of fraudulent billing, and there were allegations that the terms and rules of basic procurements were broken. And I think there's a context here that I would like to basically provide. So we haven't had any sort of documentation on what contracting vehicles were used. Bottler. The only document that we saw was the subcontract between GC Strategies and Dalian. In late August 2021, after months of going back and forth with different teams within the CBSA, everybody was confused about this project because the milestone were completely random and arbitrary. After months of going back and forth, an employee from the CBSA had a call with me, and during that call, this employee disclosed that they reviewed the task authorization and they expressed serious concern. And at that time, we haven't seen the task authorization, and we didn't know what was in that task authorization. So this employee raised serious concerns and told us that there is a risk for the project to move forward with the current structure without actually explaining in details what was there. But we technically told the CBSA that there is basically allegations of fraudulent billing because parties are being paid for the work that we were conducting, but they were not releasing payment to Bottler. And also we raise this huge red flag that there's no contractual relationship between Bottler and any of the parties, and we are not really party to any of the contracts that CBSA or other parties may have.
So when he was talking about task authorization there, what that is that's a way for government agencies to kind of get around the procurement process because of these retainer type of agreements that they've set up. So because they've already signed a contract, they've already paid the money, they can draw down from that agreement with a task authorization. So you actually don't have to go through the whole procurement and approval process. You can just use a task authorization, which is kind of like setting up a mini scope of work, send it over to the vendor that you're working with, and draw down on the retainer. And lots of organizations have processes that do this.
So just going to catch up on super chats. We have Robert McFallion with a $10 super chat. Your channel has become so much better over the last year. The two of you are so representative of the real Canada. Thanks for your truthful analysis. Thank you for your support.
And Canada with a $6.99 super chat. The government needs to start hiring the, quote, common worker, end quote, not these rich corporations that are clearly corrupt. Thanks for all you do, CIpher and Fox. Well, thank you so much for the super chat. And it's interesting that you... Robert
O'Brien. Sorry, we just lost our train of thought there. I'm also going to read a super thanks from Brian Letwinuk, $10. What this will do is force the NDP. They will sink if they support the Expose cover-up now. This could end up in the result of a no confidence vote. I hope so.
I agree, Brian.
Because this is bad.
I only watched a portion of this before, and I was saying to Fox, this could bring down the government. This
is bad. Yeah. Very, very bad.
$10 super chat from Shed Dwelling Hermit. Thank you very much. Hi, everyone. What exactly does CSIS do in this country? Anyone with two brain cells to rub together can see the mass corruption of this Liberal government and their intentional destruction of Canada. Well, so CSIS isn't supposed to spy on internal Canadian organizations. Shed Dwelling Hermit, they are primarily a foreign operation unit. It's kind of like the CIA. The CIA is external. They have internal agencies in the United States. We would have an internal agency here, but CSIS is external. But I understand the frustration that you're talking about.
Well, and one would think that your own government agencies are doing the right thing, that they're not breaking the law, that they're not committing fraud and collusion and all these other things.
Right.
But when the lid is blown off it, like it is being now, that's where the RCMP comes in and does their investigation.
Anyway, what I'll quickly say in relation to what Robert's said about the channel improving, stay tuned because we actually have some new changes coming as a result of a very generous individual that has been doing some work for us behind the scenes who wishes to remain anonymous. So the next evolution of Northern Perspective is going to be coming in the next couple days, and we're pretty excited. There's still some fine-tuning to do and some more discussions, but I think everyone is going to like it. Anyway, back to the stream.
Fundamentally, it's a no contract, no consent. Is that sort of the big red flags?
Correct.
Okay, correct. And so September, you had raised that issue with Mr. Itano. You said you had also spoken with another CBSA contact. And then the next sort of important date was November of 2022. And I believe you had raised this issue with directly, you went all the way to the top, President O'Gorman, and you had then provided a report that you had done internally. Can I ask you to talk about some of the misconduct that was laid out? Was there anything additional that you added in that November 2022 report? And can you speak to why you think that CBSA responded then after that November 2022 report? as opposed to why it didn't in 2021.
And
Thank you.
I'm afraid you haven't left the witnesses any time to respond. So perhaps
thank you.
the next round. Ms. Vignola, please, for 6 minutes.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Dutt, Mr. Morv, thank you for being here today. I just want to make sure that I really understand the situation here. At the beginning, you had a contract for $350,000. Is that correct?
$350,000. The contract that actually came back was for $336,000.
OK. Donc, la valeur finale, c'était 336 000
So the final value was $336,000.
En bout de ligne, est-ce que c'est
Who was making these payments? Was it the CBSA or a third party?
The layers that the payments went through. It went from CBSA to Cordix and Dalian. Cordix and Dalian then released the payments to GC Strategies. Finally, GC Strategies released the payments to Bottler. Sorry. And I would also add that Bottler was actually not identified on any of the contracts. It was myself and Emir personally.
OK. Combien de versements étiez-vous supposé recevoir dans le cadre de ce...
Okay. And how much were you supposed to receive on these contracts where Bottler wasn't named?
So we were supposed to receive $350,000 total before taxes for Bottler's work. It came back at $336,000. What we actually received was only the first two payments, which came to a total of $112,000.
Deux paiements sur combien?
Two payments on how many? On 6. Okay. And you said it was 100,000? How you received a little over 100,000? 112,000.
Donc, il manque 4 versements en bout de ligne.
So you didn't get 4 of the payments. Yes. In the 2 payments that you did receive, did you see any irregularities?
The second payment that we received from GC Strategies, there was an overpayment of about $2,000 and something dollars. I'll have to confirm the amount. And we knew that there was something wrong with that amount. And recently, when I reverse engineered the math, if you multiply that 2,000 and something amount by 6 total payments, it adds up to roughly the $14,000 that's missing. And we would say that that would explain why GC Strategies, that was allegedly not receiving any cuts or commissions, was added as an extra ghost contractor on the transactions with Bottler.
Donc, si je comprends bien, vous êtes sous-contracteur.
So if I understand correctly, you were a subcontractor. You were supposed to earn $350,000, and then you were told all of a sudden that your contract was actually going to be for $336,000. And then after the second payment, you realized that the difference was being paid to GC Strategies, and since they were no longer receiving money, you were receiving it?
Ask for proof of, because we're not aware of the amount that was transferred between Dalian and GC Strategies, but we know that GC Strategies accidentally issued an overpayment to Bottler of about $2,000. And we don't believe that was a mistake, because when you multiply that amount times 6, it adds up to $14,000, which is the missing amount.
So the block lady basically had it correct. And this is the whole problem, because the transparency, the paper trail, stops at the first vendor, stops at the first contractor. When they subcontract anybody else, there's no visibility into a public audit. Nothing.
And that's why they do it this way.
Absolutely, that's why they do it that way. 100% Fox. Because it allows them to hide all the corruption.
Étrange.
Strange. You spoke up about this. This committee studied Bill C-290 to protect whistleblowers. And what we heard from witnesses is that some of the witnesses experienced threats, pressure, Did you experience that type of consequence? Any threats or any pressure? Were you being forced to do certain things? If so, what happened, how, and who exerted the pressure?
Reported the misconduct. There wasn't just the September 2021 misconduct report. We also reported in December 2021, after which the CBSA responded by canceling the project. And they had asked for us to provide the remainder of the work over to them, which we did. And we provided the work in full in February, but they came back in March of 2022 and said that on top of the actual work that we did, we would have to hand over every single note and document and record that we had associated with the project, which was essentially, that would be the records and evidence of the misconduct that we had uncovered, that would include that. And these records should be handed over to Cordix and Dalian as the contractor, even though they were fully aware that we had reported numerous times, we have no relationship with Cordix and Dalian. And even if we hypothetically were to have it, why would we hand over reports of evidence to the people who we had reported misconduct against? So in that instance, Diane Daly, who was in charge of the file at the CBSA, she started threatening us in the name of Canada and making demands that we would have to hand over these files and giving us timelines of, I believe, like 24 hours. So we were threatened in the name of Canada.
This is where it starts to get shocking, folks. So Diane Daly, at the time, was a manager in the Public Service Procurement Department. Okay? So that's called blackmail. They're trying to blackmail a vendor to give them all of the evidence related to misconduct in order to be paid. That's extortion. Okay? So Bottler went to the government and said, listen, we haven't been paid. Well, you need to turn over all of the project work. Okay, here's all the project work. Well, you have to turn over all of the project documents. Well, we'll give you all the documents, but we're not turning over all the stuff related to our complaint on corruption. No, you have to turn over those too. You have to do that within 24 hours or else you're not getting paid.
That's a criminal offense.
That's extortion.
Yeah.
Now, the interesting thing that we found, because we don't just settle for the surface, you guys know us better than that. The interesting thing is that shortly after the ArriveScam app was completed and shortly after that first complaint, people started to get transferred out of the Canada Border Services Agency. And Diane Daly was also transferred out of PSPC. She now works for Health Canada as a supply team leader. Still in procurement, but a different agency. Cameron McDonald was transferred out of CBSA. He was given a promotion.
Sorry, guys. CIpher's been waiting for a very important phone call, so you're stuck with me now. Let's continue watching.
Et vous savez que vous avez l'immunité.
And you know that you have immunity here at this committee? What were these threats? If you refused to hand over the documents, did the threats come to pass, and who was making these threats?
These were issued by Diane Daly, again, this individual from the CBSA who had been, once we started reporting, she got involved and she started sending responses on behalf of the CBSA. And what they were demanding on behalf of Canada is that we send over all records that we have of all notes, file notes, documents, whatever that we had. And the threat was that if we did not hand those over, we would not get paid. And we did not hand those over because that would be obstruction of justice. And that's exactly what they were asking for in the name of Canada. So because we did not hand over those records, they did not pay us the remaining amount owed to Bottler.
Franchement, je comprends pas pourquoi il aurait fallu.
I don't understand why they wanted you to hand in those documents since you provided the work that you were supposed to be paid for. And if I understand correctly, to this day, you still haven't been paid for the work that you completed. And
what I would add is that we handed over the work to the CBSA. We handed over to Firth Christian Firth, the GC Strategies, on February 3rd of 2022. And based on the PSPC contracting rules, I believe they have 5 days to review the work and get back to us if they have any requests for modifications. And I think more than 45, 50 days later, they came back to us towards the end of March, which is towards the end of the fiscal year, to pressure us then to hand over the documents because there was a fiscal year-end deadline coming over. So it was a pressure tactic to get us to cooperate and hand over documents to the parties that we had reported the misconduct against. And because we refused to do so, we were not paid.
So that's nuts that they still have not been paid for over a year later, like a year and a half, February 2022 till now. They had delivered the project as was contracted, but they were being blackmailed to hand over all of this information that would put everybody at GC Strategies and in the CBSA in really deep trouble. So these two folks, Morv and Dutt, had foregone their paychecks to break this open and share this information with Canadians. And I want to say thank you to Humble Tracker with another 10 Northern Perspective memberships. Thank you very much for your support. So let's get back to it.
That is our time. Mr. Johns, please.
First, I want to start with thanking you for having courage to do the right thing and to come forward. And really, you're heroes and for so many people. And clearly, this has been going on for too long. I mean, there's more to this. And I want to go back to Ms. Vignola's, thread around Ms. Daly. So you got paid $112,000 so far. You've been promised $350,000. You sent an email on September 27th, according to the Globe and Mail. Ms. Daly sent a strongly worded email to GC Strategies and Cordex to pay you immediately. The next day you got paid, or soon after. Is that correct?
That is correct, but there is some more context to it. So at the same time that we had sent the misconduct report to Antonio Utano, Amir had also sent an email to Ying Ying Ong, who was another project liaison at the CBSA, demanding or requesting that immediately payments to the contractors, so Dalian and Cordex, were stopped, and any payments that had already been made to the contractors by the CBSA be refunded. We also stated very explicitly in the misconduct reports that we submitted that we will not be accepting payments from these contractors and that we are not comfortable being associated with these contractors. So after we sent that, Diane Daly then intervened and sent that email saying that the payment had to be issued right away. And we were also told by the CBSA that it was impossible to request a refund from the contractors and that the money had, quote unquote, gone down the drain. So we were put in a position where we felt that taxpayer money had been wasted and we had no other choice but to receive those payments through those contractors so that taxpayer money would not have essentially been flushed down the toilet.
Okay. How long had you worked on the project before you sent the email in September and you hadn't been paid?
So officially, we started work on the project at the beginning of February, I believe, but we had been working unofficially on the project for years. Okay. So we started groundwork in, I believe, November of 2019 when we were first contacted.
By Mr. Firth. By
Mr. Firth. And then we also, we were told by Mr. Firth on behalf, and this was a message relayed from the CBSA, that as soon as we had the meeting with President Osowski at the time in September 2020, that we should start work right away on the project and that the contracting would come through after. The CBSA always pays, but start the work now.
Okay. So you hadn't been paid for well over 18 months. It's a long time to be running a small shop, trying to, survive. I can't imagine the enormous stress and pressure that you would have been under. Now, Ms. O'Gorman has said that her understanding, and this is on Tuesday, that the individuals at Bottler have been paid. Can you clarify?
Well, I believe that she's literally using semantics there to say that we have been paid something, but we have not been paid in full.
Okay. Do you believe that she thinks that because you're subbing out, subcontracting for the other companies, that they were paid and they just haven't paid you, and they believe it's an internal issue between the two companies?
Well, the CBSA does say on record that this is an issue between the contractors. The CBSA is also aware through numerous records and ATIPs and direct reports that we have no relationship with the contractors. These were the CBSA's contractors. So I'm not sure where this relationship between us and the contractors would be enforced by the CBSA.
Well, I just find it really interesting that Ms. Daly would write an email to get you paid the first time, but Ms. Daly or Ms. O'Gorman hasn't written them a second email to pay you the rest. So they say that it's not your problem, right? I mean, they're not their problem. It's between contractors. They get involved when they choose to, and they don't get involved when they decide it's not in their best interest.
That is correct. So in December 2021, when we again reported misconduct, after which the CBSA responded by retaliating and cutting the project, they had said, it was either then or earlier, Ms. Daly had said we must retain confidences in our contractors. And then in the November 2022 misconduct report, where we stated that we had still not been paid, then the CBSA's Pierre Lessard, who is, I believe, now in charge of the investigation, he's their chief security officer and director of something. I'll have to clarify that. He came back and said, well, this is between yourself and your business partners. And I find it very confusing that when we first raised misconduct allegations, it was their contractors that they had to retain confidences in. But the second time around, it was now our business partners.
Right.
Mr. Chair, if I can
Just because I've only got a minute, I'm sorry,
Sure.
and you're going to get a chance to, but the people that you subbed for have been paid for your work. Would that be true? And so I'm just going to dive in quickly. Can you talk about the reprisals that happened as soon as you sent that email in September, and have the RCMP spoken to you yet?
I have not spoken with the RCMP yet. They have spoken with Amir, but we faced immediate reprisal from the contractors as soon as we reported the September 2021 misconduct. We had issues getting security clearances for other staff members that were supposed to be working on the projects. We had more delayed payments. They refused to meet with us to discuss issues. So CBSA was supposed to meet with us to rework the contract into a clean contract. They kept pushing that meeting and essentially ghosted us. And then when we again reported that misconduct in December 2022, the CBSA's reprisal was to cut the contract completely, saying that they no longer had a need for such a solution.
So there you go. They were raising too much of a ruckus, and the CBSA just cut their contract and said, that's it. We don't need your tech anymore. We don't need you anymore. They're trying to hide it already.
Thanks, Mr. Johns. Mr. Barrett, welcome back to OGO. 5 minutes, please.
Well, thanks very much, Chair, and thank you very much, Ms. Dutt, Mr. Morv, for being here today, and frankly, for your work that you're doing on behalf of all Canadians. Not just the principal work that you set out to do with Bottler, but also the work that you're doing with respect to accountability in government contracting. It's essential, and it's a main function of this committee. So I'm pleased that you've agreed to join us and answer some questions. Do you have any evidence related to identity theft?
Yes, we do.
And are you able to provide that evidence to the committee?
Yes.
Okay. And is it in written form? Is it in printed form?
Well, identity theft is it's a two-step basically offense, and by all means, I'm not a lawyer, but it's a two-step offense which includes forgery and using identities to receive benefits. Okay. And this is exactly what happened in our case.
Okay. With respect to the criminal code offense of fraud on government, what evidence can you provide with respect to fraudulent resumes or fraudulent billings?
Well, fraud on the government particularly entitles individuals who, includes individuals who promise or pretend, they claim or pretend to have some sort of influence with the government, and they claim compensation for it. And this, we have, a big record of Mr. Firth and also his associates promising different kinds of influence, promising contracts, promising, opening doors and very specific things. And they all request commissions for it.
Sorry, if I quickly might add to that. You already have seen an evidence of this in the Globe and Mail. They published in the article an email from Firth saying FYI. And if you read that email, he says the amount has been cut, but we can recover it from the next one, which is CRA. That's promising a guaranteed contract with the CRA and also promising that you are going to extract funds from one contract for another.
With respect to the email that was published in the Globe and Mail, are you able to provide these supporting documents to this? Are you able to table them to this committee?
Absolutely.
Thank you. With respect to, we'll continue on the list of requests for evidence, forgery, collusion, impersonation. These all speak to criminal code offenses. What evidence can you provide with respect to them?
Well, I think for the CVs, we can give you very quickly our original CVs and then the CVs that were provided to the contracting authority to show that we had inflated experience. That's going to be the quickest one. We also have multiple legal notices that we had sent to the different parties that were involved, demanding that they provide proof of our consent to be named on the contracts, which we have never provided. And through not providing that response, it is evident that that does not exist. So that is another proof that our identity was stolen and used for the execution of the task authorization.
And Mr. Chair, just to add to that, for fraudulent, so the payments should have not gone through GC Strategies. The email that that was referred to Globe and Mail today from Diane Daly requesting payments to go through GC Strategies, payments should have not gone through GC Strategies. GC Strategies is not named on the contract. And also fraudulent billing, Ritika can talk about her experience. She wasn't working on the CBSA project, but her name appeared on invoices that Corridix submitted to the CBSA and received payments, and we have proof of payments that was made by the CBSA on invoices for someone who was not working on the project, but her name was there.
Can you submit those documents to the committee clerk?
Sure.
Thank you. Christian Firth told you that he was friends and had a relationship with Cameron McDonald. Is that correct?
Correct.
And in reference to Mr. McDonald, did Mr. Firth tell you, and I quote, "I've been with him his whole career in the government," close quote?
Correct.
Were you ever coached or directed to offer praise of Mr. McDonald?
Correct.
And who else did Christian Firth tell you he was friends with and had a relationship with in the government?
Well, Mr. Firth had a very wide network of high-level government executives that he was friends with, and mostly contracting authorities, C-level government executives, assistant. I remember Mr. Firth and one of his associates, they always referred that they break their roles, and Mr. Firth was only dealing with DGs and up to ADMs, and one of his friends was only dealing with all the ADMs and DMs. Other contacts that Mr. Firth actually had those close relationships was I believe, a Director General and Acting Chief Information Officer of Transport Canada, another agency that wanted to procure Bottler.
I'm afraid I have to interrupt. That is our time. Mr. Sousa, please, for 5.
So those people that Morv was just listing off, those are very high profile people that could all be involved in this scheme, in this scandal. So it's not necessarily that it only happened with ArriveCAN. It could have happened hundreds of times. There could have been millions or billions even of taxpayer dollars that have just been squandered in this manner because all these high level people were working on it. And I do want to say thank you to Humble Tracker for 10 gifted memberships that I think I missed. So thank you, and sorry that I missed that. Let's continue.
Thank you both for being here. We all share concerns to make certain that we get to the bottom of this and that people are being respected, there's integrity, and that there's proper disciplines and processes in place. So I appreciate you standing up and recognizing some of these issues. During the project, how many people are working on it? Is it just the two of you, or are there more in your shop?
No, there are several on the project. I was not working on the project. I was on medical leave, but Amir had a team at Bottler that was working on it that was internal, and we also had several subject matter experts that were external to the project. So the TA would not have been correctly reflected that there were only 2 resources.
And you didn't have a contract with CBSA?
No.
You had no relationship with the government of Canada. I mean, other than doing the work, but you had no contractual relationship with the government of Canada.
For this instance, no. We had a separate contractual relationship with the Department of Justice for a completely different project, but for this specific project, no. We had no.
And this specific project was a pilot.
Yes.
It wasn't ArriveCAN.
No.
Hi, everybody. I'm back. So this is the guy that is really that I noticed. This is this is the first time I've heard him speak. He's trying to go after the Bottler duo and try and discredit them and try to ensure that everyone understands that this has nothing to do with the ArriveCAN app. Okay, and I do have to commend Miss Dutt. She does a commendable job of sticking to her guns and sticking to the facts here.
So this is not about ArriveCAN. Your dispute with your middlemen, I guess, is it DC Strategies? GC Strategies, right? Is the one that you had a contract with?
We had no contracts with any of the parties.
So how were you made aware of the deal or the opportunity?
They spoke with us. They were speaking on behalf of the CBSA. They were communicating on behalf of the CBSA, and the CBSA also verbatim told us that work with GC Strategies.
I'm sorry, you had contact with CBSA.
We did have contact with CBSA.
We didn't have a contract with them.
That is correct.
And whatever.
GCS.
You said they didn't have a contract with CBSA?
They had different contracts with CBSA, but they were not involved in the final contract that was executed that was supposed to be for our work.
And
So who did?
I'm sorry.
Who had the final contract?
So the
Dalian and
contract,
Cordic, sir.
So GC Strategies had contract with the CBSA. So for example, for ArriveCAN, I think they tabled different contracts with the agency, and these are professional contracts that basically someone like GC Strategies use to retain services of professionals. So GC Strategies had contracts, but GC Strategies didn't use their contracts for our pilot. They brought in a different firm by the name of Dalian and Cordic.
Right.
That firm had a contract with the CBSA that was used for ArriveCAN.
So who paid you?
So GC Strategies paid us. So
And they paid you twice
twice.
for the full 350.
No, for 112.
112. So you're still out 238.
Correct.
But that's been your point of contact is GC Strategies, right? That's who's paying you.
No, CBSA should pay us because the work
No. You don't have an agreement with CBSA.
Well, we don't have an agreement with.
You don't
well,
have a contract, right? And they didn't contract you. So it was GC Strategies that provided you the opportunity.
No, it was CBSA because the work was for CBSA.
I understand.
CBSA,
But who approached you?
It was sent on behalf of CBSA.
Sorry. So the CBSA basically sent Mr. Firth and specifically contracting authority of the CBSA, Mr. Cameron McDonald, specifically stated that you have to work with GC Strategies if you want to work with the CBSA. And he was a contracting authority.
And this was for the pilot now, not ArriveCAN. This is the pilot.
Well,
scenario.
the pilot went through the same contract as ArriveCAN. So ArriveCAN is not one contract. ArriveCAN has been implemented through a series of contracts, and one of those contracts is the same contract that Bottler was executed under.
Did GC and these other individuals use other contractors, subcontractors to do the work?
Well,
For which instance?
for
I don't know. I'm trying to understand which instance we're talking about. You're talking about this particular one, which is a pilot. You didn't do anything on ArriveCAN.
This guy is so frustrating to listen to, isn't he?
Well, he's got one goal, and that goal is not to get to the truth. That goal is to make sure that the Liberals and the party are like completely distanced from the ArriveCAN scandal. And that's
100%.
exactly what he's trying to do right now.
100%. And he's trying to obfuscate, he's trying to confuse, and he's trying to get Bottler to trip up and say something that they shouldn't be. That's going to unravel, in his eyes, unravel their testimony here. So he's trying to say, well, you didn't have a contract with CBSA. How can you have them paid? And Bottler is saying, the CBSA told us to work with GC Strategies. And that's where this all comes into play. So as frustrating as this guy is to listen to, it's equally frustrating to know that that's the agenda that he has. He's not interested in getting to the corruption. He's interested in telling these people, well, you know, you shouldn't be complaining. Has nothing to do with the government. Go talk to GC Strategies.
You only did this pilot piece, and you're looking for that money to get paid, and you're concerned about nefarious issues that may have taken place. So we're trying to get to the bottom of that. Sure.
I think sorry, go ahead.
And the RCMP have written saying we're not investigating ArriveCAN. That's not the issue. They are addressing some of your concerns through another issue, which I presume now is this matter. It's not ArriveCAN.
Clearly, this guy didn't read the Globe and Mail article, right? Right. No nightcap tonight, Princess Thickness.
This is the nightcap. We decided to do it in this format because we knew that this was going to be very long, and we wanted to show you all everything. So the easiest way for us to do that would be just to live stream it all and comment as we go.
Yeah, and we're showing you all the questions from the Liberals and the Conservatives. Typically, we only show you stuff from the Conservatives because that's where the real meat is, but we wanted you to see it as everybody else did. And you can see how the Liberals are reacting, how the NDP are reacting, and the Conservatives. And
we just hit 600 likes on the live stream, which I think is a record for us. So thank you, everybody.
Great
but we've
job.
got 7 extra watching. 14 extra watching. So if you could give us a thumbs up too, we'd appreciate it.
Great job, everybody. And welcome to the people that are new to Northern Perspective. There's a lot of our members in here, and if you talk to them, they will tell you to subscribe to our channel. And if you're not subscribed, make sure you're subscribed by the end of the stream, because there's a lot of great content that we have.
Is that correct?
I think there's a confusion that this is about a payment. This is about systemic corruption that we've uncovered. And the concerns that we have brought to the government at every level is about systemic corruption. The systemic corruption was reflected in the manner that Bottler's contracting was executed. It was reflected in ways that ArriveCAN contracting was executed, and that is what is being investigated right now.
So I'm confused. Why did you do the deal? Like, you had an opportunity to approach CBSA, put forward a proposal. Did that not occur?
The CBSA contacted us. We were not the ones that approached the CBSA.
I'm afraid, sorry, Mr. Souza.
The CBSA.
Yeah, I'm afraid that is our time. We'll get back to you. Ms. Vignola for 2.5 minutes, please.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président.
Before we get to the blocks questioning, just want to give a shout out to Shed Dwelling Hermit. Thank you very much for gifting 5 Northern Perspective memberships. And if you received a lottery membership from that, give some love to Shed Dwelling Hermit. You got a free membership for a month.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Now, if I understand correctly, and I'd like you to confirm this or deny it, what I understand correctly is that what you noted in your contract with CBSCA had some irregularities, and you noted the same irregularities in the ArriveCAN contract in the documents tabled by GC Strategies. Is that correct?
The irregularities that have been identified.
OK, je vais continuer avec, je sais, mais j'ai 2 minutes et demie.
Yes, I'll just continue because I have 2.5 minutes. Mr. Morv, according to the document audit that you did at GC Strategies, how many days were billed to the government for ArriveCAN, and does it seem to make sense, the number of days of work?
Okay, everybody. Before we get to this, thank you very much to Robert McFallon for the $10 super chat. Fantastic work tonight. Thank you very much. All right. If you haven't seen this, pay very close attention. I'm pretty sure this is the spot. This is going to blow your mind. So what she just asked him is how many days were billed to the government for the ArriveCAN app. That's days in terms of hours worked. Pay attention.
Thanks.
So, based on my assessment, ArriveCAN does not require $5.5 million of work only on the front end development of the application that was tabled based on the contracts that was tabled by Mr. Firth to this committee. I believe that we worked around the days. There were 32 years worth of work work required for ArriveCAN, and only just for the front end of the app. So for the forms, Mr. Firth tabled 32 years worth of work just for the forms.
32 years. 32 years worth of man hours to build the interface.
So that's what the person using it sees, right? Like that's not all the garbage in the background, like all the programming. It's
Correct.
just like you log into the app and that's what you see.
It's basically just what you see when you look at the app. You know, you swipe across, you see the form, you enter in your information. That 32 years. 32 years. Ladies and gentlemen, that could be mocked up in about 3 hours and maybe take a week to put together. 32 years. And that's by one person, by the way. One person.
Oh, and before we continue, we have Rev5 Fear Not with a $2.79 super chat. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. Thank you. All right. So now everyone take your hand off of your forehead and we will continue the stream.
Donc, pour la forme, pour ce qu'on voit, pour la...
So for the form, for what we see, the skeleton project that anyone can see, 32 years of work were charged to the government. Thank you.
We have 20 seconds left. Okay. Mr. Johns, over to you, please.
Thank you. I think I'll just be really clear about the relation with ArriveCAN. I mean, the fact that Mr. Frith and the CBSA and their relationship, and you're highlighting how they do business, is absolutely related to ArriveCAN.
Now,
he's NDP.
This is interesting.
Yeah, he's NDP. So the fact that he's trying to undo all that work that the Liberal guy was saying that, oh, it's not related to ArriveCAN. And now the NDP is like, no, it's totally related to ArriveCAN.
They're completely trying to distance themselves now from the Liberals as it relates to this.
Like even outside of committee, like this is significant because it could maybe spell the beginning of the end of this coalition.
It could be, because this could blow up. If there's actual criminal charges that are filed with people in the government, this could blow up. And yeah, so very, very interesting. If people want to know what this app should actually cost, this app should actually cost to create, and I will be conservative here, and that's not even an intended pun. I will be conservative. This app could probably be built for about $70,000 to $80,000.
And somebody did it in a 3-day weekend.
Two guys did it in a 3-day weekend. They charged they said $250. I think they're even sandbagging that.
And I just want to know, like, who wrote you the check for $112,000? Who paid you?
Those payments.
So how did GC Strategies pay you if they don't have a contract?
That's a very good question. That's basically the concept of a ghost contractor.
So thank you very much, Ken Hobbs, for 5 Northern Perspective memberships. And interesting question from the NDP. So who gave you the check? GC Strategies. Well, how could they give it to you if they don't have the contract? And Bottler's response is, that's a great question. Right? So there's these backroom deals that these agencies have, and that these staffing agencies have, that are just trading contracts, trading money, and they're inflating the value of the contract, charging it back to the government and the taxpayer. But the government knows what's going on here, and that's the really sketchy part.
So they found $112,000 to pay you, although you don't have a contract with anybody.
That is correct.
So they got caught without a contract and paid you because they were worried about how they were going to make this work.
Perhaps, I mean, I can't speak of their behalf, but
I've never heard of anybody getting paid $112,000 work doing contract work for the government and getting paid without a contract.
Well, that's the case.
Okay. Okay, now the fraudulent piece, I'm really concerned about the Indigenous set-aside. Can you speak about that? Because, and how that feels when you've been paid and you know that this money is supposed to be for Indigenous procurement, and that's Canada's goals, and they tout they're meeting the 5% threshold of all Indigenous procurement.
Well, we were shocked when we learned that this contract was a set aside for Indigenous contract. So according to the terms of the contract, based on my understanding, individuals who work on the contract should be of Indigenous origin. So we are not part of, we're not Indigenous, and we would absolutely never agree to work on any Indigenous contract. Those contracts are specifically should be awarded to Indigenous communities, and they should work on those contracts.
How does it feel in the spirit of reconciliation as a settler like myself? You know, seeing that this work isn't going to Indigenous peoples like the intention that it should be for the founding peoples of the
We
states.
felt disgusted.
I think it's a slap in the face for Indigenous businesses that they believe that they have an opportunity to actually go after those contracts, but in reality, those contracts are being subcontracted and executed through parties that would not be actually eligible for those funds.
So virtue signaling there, as you would expect by the NDP, you know, calling himself a settler. Like, did you walk out in the bush and, you know, chop down some trees? But you know, setting that aside, you know, there's a policy in place that the government sets, and they can't even follow their own policies. And to the NDP guy's point, I agree with it. They're touting that they're giving all of these Indigenous businesses opportunity. They're meeting the 5% goal of all procurement that they have to give to Indigenous businesses, but it's not even going to them. Because this business that's getting tens of millions of dollars from the government is giving it to non-Indigenous entities. But the government has no visibility to that because they're operating as subcontracting.
And I mean, I feel bad for Morv and Dutt because they had no control over that. They didn't know that the ghost contractor was essentially lying to the government that, yeah, these guys are Indigenous status. Don't worry about it. So, I mean, they must feel pretty awful, and it's not their fault.
They must feel, unfortunately, incredibly foolish after all of this because, you know, they realize, oh my God, we were this naive. We didn't see all these red flags in the beginning, and this is where we've ended up. So I do feel bad for them, but kudos to them for standing up.
Exactly. That maybe they did feel bad, and now they're like, you know what? We're going to make this right, and they are doing the right thing. And again, these two should be regarded as Canadian heroes, that they're fighting the system, they're fighting the corruption, they're doing it in a peaceful, articulate way, and they're just blowing the lid off of all of this.
And as for my settler comment, I'm fully well aware that it takes a lot more than just chopping down some trees, Tamo. That was my reducto ad absurdum approach to the NDP guy's comment. So I'm glad I gave you a laugh. Anyway, on to this, and thank you everyone for the 700 likes.
Thanks, Mr. Genuis, please, for 5.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm shocked by what I'm hearing today. I never would have expected to hear this kind of testimony at a parliamentary committee in Canada. You, our witnesses, are describing what is a horrific system of systemic corruption in the procurement system, systemic government corruption, and you're presenting a clear timeline and clear evidence to support those incredibly serious allegations. Members of the government are saying this isn't about ArriveCAN. I think it is about ArriveCAN, but it is also much bigger than just ArriveCAN. I wanted to say back what I think was your description of it and get you to confirm that I have this right. You're describing a system in which government contracts go to preferred contractors. They claim to subcontract to others who they claim did the work, and they provide reports on this. But those subcontractors might not be doing the work. They might not know they're being named. They might not even exist in some cases. And then this system allows those initial contractors to overbill taxpayers and cash in big. Is that what's going on here?
Thank you so much for your $20 super chat, Daphne. Your fam loves you bunches. Just look at the likes they gave to spread your truth. So proud. Thank you very, very much. This is actually a record. I think the number of viewers on our stream and likes. Every like we get is another like that bursts a record. So thank you, everybody. And remember, this isn't our truth. This truth belongs to Canada, and it belongs to Canadians.
Encourage the contractors to actually do this. That is correct.
Wow. To your knowledge, how widespread is this system?
Well, if you look into today's article that Globe and Mail wrote, only the 3 contractors that we're discussing, Bottler and ArriveCAN, they're the same contractors, $500 million in the past 10 years.
Did you catch that, everybody? I'll get back to that as soon as I read this. Joey Harshaw with a $27.99 super chat. Thank you so much. Let's see how big we can go. I dare someone to donate more. Humble Tracker follows with 10 additional Northern Perspective gifted memberships. Thank you so, so much. So, if you caught it, these 3 entities, Cordex, Dalian, and GC Strategies, in the last 10 years, $500 million, with a B, $500 million. Now remember, GC Strategies doesn't do any work. No work. All they do is find other people to do the work. In 2023, GC Strategies has been paid $26.6 million. Sorry, incorrect. That was Dalian. It's hard to get these guys straight. $12.7 million GC Strategies. Last year, $18.1 million GC Strategies. 2021, $12.8 million. In 2013, these 3 entities, only 2 of them existed at the time, got paid a total of $22.8 million. In 2023, all 3 entities have been paid a total of $84.2 million.
Not bad for 2 guys working out of a garage.
This has been escalating for the last 10 years. 10 years.
You missed it.
Okay.
You missed it. And thank you to No Name for the $100 super chat.
Holy No Name. Thank you so much. Looks like you took Mr. Harshaw's bet and raised him a couple of beers on that. Thank you very, very much. We really, really appreciate that.
As you know, I think, but just for the benefit of the public as well, parliamentary committees have significant powers when it comes to requesting information. I think Canadians are looking to us, the Government Operations Committee, the mighty OGO, as the chair likes to call it, to do all we can to get to the bottom of this. So in a moment, I'm going to ask you what documents we should be requesting as a committee to help us further understand and dig into what's going on. But first, you mentioned the breadth of this. I want to request that the committee ask for all contracts between a government department, agency, or Crown Corporation and GC Strategies, Dalian, or Cortex over the last 8 years. And I'd like us to request those contracts by Tuesday of next week.
Boom. This is about to blow sky high, everyone. You asked, many of you have asked, how often has this been done? We're about to find out, everyone. We are about to find out. And with that, a $50 bomb of a super chat from Rick Penkauskas. You two are awesome. Thank you so much for that. Thank you very, very much. So by Tuesday, they're asking for every single government contract awarded to Dalian, GC Strategies, and Cortex over the last 8 years?
Over the last 8 years that Trudeau's been in office.
Right? 8 years. This is going to get very interesting very, very fast.
Is there agreement for that request?
For the clerk, please.
If my time will be paused, I'll repeat it. All contracts between a government department, agency, or Crown Corporation and GC Strategies, Dalian, or Cortex for the last 8 years, and that those documents be provided by Tuesday.
We have those.
Oh, we get the elevator music now. My
So
apologies for this, everyone.
Yeah, they're doing it in camera right now.
Yeah, they're executing procedure just to make sure they have this in line and things are documented properly, and they're recording who on the committee is in favor of that request. So, no doubt the NDP will be, based on their behavior. No doubt the Bloc will be, and no doubt the Conservatives will be. That outnumbers the Liberals. So, there you go.
We need 3 more likes to get to 750, which will be an absolute record for this channel. If you haven't given us a thumbs up, please do so.
What Tuesday are they talking about? They are talking
This
about
coming Tuesday the 31st.
Tuesday
correct?
the 31st.
Halloween.
Halloween.
Wouldn't that be a great Halloween treat?
Yeah, trick or treat, Trudeau. Yeah. This, oh, we're at 7:59. Great job, chat. Great job. Every like is another record.
765. Awesome.
Oh my goodness.
Who got the contract for this friggin' music? Yeah.
Probably somebody by GC Strategies. Humble Tracker with a $20 super chat. Thank you so much. Please, however big you get, never make chat members only. Let's make sure everyone has access to the talk. We will never, ever, ever do that, Humble Tracker. I know exactly what you're talking
Can
about.
we agree to this, colleagues? Mr. Jouari?
And thank you very much for a $27.99 super chat from Katie Cat. Thank you for all you do. Love you both. Yeah. For those that don't know, because some of you, this may be your first live stream, or maybe you've only watched us on live stream. What some channels will do is they will restrict chat to members only, and what that does is, you know, they get large enough, and they incentivize you to purchase memberships in order to actually join the chat and have a conversation. We don't believe in doing that. That's not our goal. Our goal is about spreading the message, spreading truth, and making sure Canadians are informed. So this is never going to get so big that it goes to our head. And I do appreciate you actually saying that so I could bring that up, Humble Tracker. Thank you very much. Bank Person, $10 super sticker. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you. We support this motion with 2 amendments. One, we would like to go at least 12 years back. And the other thing we like to do, we like to get an extension. There's a lot of documents. So rather than my next Tuesday, probably the following Tuesday, 2 weeks. And the third point is all of these are available already on open source. So unless you're looking for something else, we get clarification. In general, we are in agreement with those 3 caveats.
That's interesting. Liberal says he's in agreement. Now he's not on. He's not on. You know, one of the main liberals. So maybe he's interested in distancing himself from this, or who knows? It's very, very tricky to know what the Liberals are thinking, because they've shut down a previous hearing on the audit for ArriveCAN, and now they're agreeing to the release of contracts. So it'll be interesting to see what happens from this.
Chair, so it's all contracts, to be clear, the full contracts, which I do not believe is available on open source. But last 12 years, and by the following Tuesday, we agree. Let's proceed.
Okay, so they're going to give them a week and a half. So they're asking for this now by November 7th for 12 years of all contracts. Brian Cameron with a $5 super sticker or super chat. Thank you very much. They should play that music in the background in House of Commons every time a Liberal speaks.
They should just have like a trombone over top of it instead.
Yeah. Wah, wah, wah. Bank resident with another $10 super chat. Thank you very much. I am a temporary resident, though I am not a Canadian. My thoughts with what currently Canadians are going through, despite the Canada got plenty of resources, but being ended up in wrong leadership. Thanks, Northern Perspective. Yeah, I don't think you'll find a Canadian that disagrees with you that wants to vote Conservative. We are in a terrible situation with the current government, and we want them out.
Sorry. I'd like to chime in here.
Go ahead, Mr. Johns.
Yeah, so I've been through this circle, and I'm not trying to give the government any more time, but I actually want the documents. So I'm worried we're going to come back here in 2 weeks, and there'll be a pile of things missing in redactions. Why don't we go with 3 weeks? I want to go 12 years, but I want them. You know, and if we do 2 weeks, there's no way we're going to get them.
Not that many.
It sounds like there's a lot with
Yeah.
$500 million potentially worth of contracts. I want the information. And
Colleagues, are we fine with 3 weeks?
The typical standard
Okay,
here.
Gord, so we can move on. Are we fine with 3 weeks?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay.
Okay,
hold on, Ms. Vignola, and let's wrap this up, please. Sorry.
Rapidement,
Very quickly, I just want to make sure that the documents will not be blanked out at all.
Yes, I do believe we're asking for them translated and unredacted. It's just the contracts. So we're good with that, colleagues? Yes. So we agree with the sub-amendment, we agree with the amendment, and we agree with the motion. Thank you, colleagues.
thank
Finish
you.
up, Mr. Jennings, please.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, so they didn't clarify it, but it sounds like they're giving 3 weeks. So that means that it would be November 14th. And it's interesting that the NDP said that, because he said, well, if we give them 2 weeks, then they're just going to give them to us back all redacted. So I want to give them the extra week so there's no excuse for them to come back to that. Interesting that the NDP is taking that stance.
Yeah. They voted with to shut down committee the other day with the auditor, wasn't it? And now they're like, no, we need these documents and we need them unredacted.
And everyone, you don't have to worry about shredding happening, because government documents are now electronic and have been for a while. So they can delete them, but there's backups. So unless the IT guys are part of the corruption, which it is possible, I guess, but unless the IT guys are involved, then they're going to get these contracts.
Well, and from what I know of, when I used to be in the workforce, usually the backup's done off-site. Like you don't even keep it in the same place in case there's an emergency and the building burns down or something. So it would be very difficult for them to delete everything.
The other thing in terms of documents is that Mr. Barrett and others have requested documents from our witnesses. I want to make sure that there's agreement from the committee to publish the documents that our witnesses should wish to provide to us. That's not necessarily automatic. I think if they provide evidence that supports their testimony, that should be made available publicly.
If they have agreed to provide them to us, we do have a rule that is passing a motion in this committee that they're to be provided to us within 3 weeks, if they've agreed to.
But that we would. But I'm talking not about the contracts. I'm talking about the documents that these witnesses wish to provide to us. That we would make those documents publicly available, because we're having this important testimony. If they're providing evidentiary support for that testimony, we should be, as a matter of course, sharing that evidence along with their testimony.
Mr. Sousa?
I would be very cautious about that, given the privacy issues and the issues of competitiveness. You're not just talking about Bottler, you're now involving a number of other companies, and it would be totally inappropriate to go public on something that has competitive sensitivity. You're talking about other people's businesses, and I don't think we have that right.
Incorrect, Sousa. You're still talking about the contracts. So what Genuous is asking, it's probably apparent, but I'll go over it anyway. So they have asked and will continue to ask both of the witnesses here. I think Mr. Barrett has already asked some questions by now.
Yeah, Mr. Barrett had already asked if they would be willing to provide whatever documents they had,
so that's some
and they
serious
said yes,
stuff.
absolutely.
So what Genuous is saying is we want to make sure that all of that is publicly available for the general public to see. And all of the Conservatives are lining up to this and saying, yes, absolutely. Holy crap, Humble Chacker. Thank you so much. 50 Northern Perspective memberships. I think she just raised no name on Mr. Harshaw's challenge. Thank you so much. And everyone, show some love to Humble. I know she says, she doesn't want to draw attention to herself, but she is so generous. Thank you so much. So what the Conservatives want to do is make sure all of these documents are publicly available so every Canadian can see them. Sousa's trying to shut that down, but I think he's just confused himself because he thinks they're talking about the contract. So I hope they correct him.
We're talking about documents that the witnesses provided.
Yeah,
but
there you go.
document will include.
I'll let Mr. Johns speak, and then I'll just comment quickly on past practice. Go ahead, Mr. Johns.
Can we get the documents and then have a discussion with the committee? If we identify concerns, then we can have that conversation.
That was going to be my suggestion, as we've done in the past during committee. Are we fine with that, colleagues? We will receive the documents here, and we will decide whether we release anything. Thanks. You have 20 seconds, Mr. Jones.
Well, okay. I'd like you to share with us what documents we should be requesting that will provide further support to help us understand this issue.
So I believe all valid proof of valid security clearances of any individual who worked on these contracts, and also consent that individuals who are named on these task authorizations for $500 million, that they actually consent and they're aware that their names are basically used in these TAs. I think that's the bigger issue.
Okay, so is there agreement to request that information?
I believe you're asking for documents that's pertaining to an actual investigation by our CMP. Like, that is actually being done now. Like, there's another investigation underway which pertains not to
That's not a
ArriveCAN, but to
point
these
of order,
other
Mr.
matters. So
Sousa.
I presume that's what you're...
Mr. Sousa, that's not a point of order.
Well, no, but
It's
that
not
is...
I've ruled it's not a point of order, Mr. Sousa.
I just want to clarify.
Love it. See, Kelly McCauley, he's really a very jovial individual. So it's very interesting when he becomes serious and lays the hammer down and basically tells the Liberal, back off, be quiet. You're not addressing an actual point of order, so sit there and shut your mouth. It's very, very satisfying to see him do that after the crap that the Liberals have pulled.
Thanks. Okay, Mr. Sousa, please. Would you please just quickly repeat what you're asking for? I just want to make sure the clerk has received that information and that we quickly agree or not on that issue.
So if you do want to just repeat, Mr. Morv?
Of any individual who is named on any task authorization should be provided, and also verification by SSI from PSPC that any security clearances that link to those individual names should be verified and validated by PSPC.
So documents related to requests for consent verification.
So just interrupt, but we also need to be clear who you're requesting them from.
Right, so that it would be PSPC would have these documents.
It would be PSPC for the security clearances, and it would be PSPC for both, for security clearances and for consent.
Okay, so if anyone's confused what's going on here, so one of the big problems that Bottler has identified is that their names were being used on contracts, not the company itself, not Bottler. Their individual names, Amir Morv and Ms. Dutt. Their individual names were being used as people to be doing work on contracts that they were never party to. They never agreed to. So that's identity theft. Okay? And that's also fraud. So what they're suggesting is that they request all of the contracts that go back for 12 years. And in addition to that, they ask for the security screening of all of the people that have been named on those contracts and that their consent is included. Because this is really going to blow the lid off of that if they find literally one more person that was named on a contract that never provided consent and was never given a security clearance by PSPC. Because in order to work on government systems, you have to have a security clearance. Bottler never did until the Justice Department. But there's other people that just, they don't have the clearance because they're all subcontracted out by the contractors. It's ridiculous. And thank you very much from Dawn. She just informed us we hit 23,000 subscribers.
Oh, amazing.
Thank you very, very much.
And we also
everybody.
have 805 likes on the stream, which is definitely a record. So thank you, everybody in the chat.
Every new like is a new record. So thank you very much.
Oh, we got 2 more.
Okay. And a date?
I'm happy to defer to the 3-week timeline proposed.
Comfortable with that for 3 weeks? Wonderful. Colleagues, Mr. Shawari, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Welcome, witnesses. And let me start by extending our sorrow to the experience you had, Ms. Dutt, in your previous work as it relates to sexual harassment. And kudos to you for turning that into a success at Butler. So congratulations. Sorry that happened to you. Now, I'm going to go back to the contract that you had through GC strategies with CBSA. This was a pilot project for an application that deals with sexual harassment at work enabled by AI. Is this true?
Contract, but what it was supposed to be was that the CBSA approached us for a solution that would help individuals who have faced harassment, including sexual harassment, in the workplace. And it was in compliance with Bill C-65.
Okay, so you worked with CBSA, but you got paid through GC strategy.
That is correct. And we asked not for the game.
So were you, had you agreed to be paid through GC strategies?
No, we emailed the CBSA and asked them to stop all payments and that we would not accept payments from the contractors.
Okay. When was the first payment to you made by GC strategies?
After we sent that report that we would not like payments from them, that was 2 days later.
What did you do with that payment?
We were told that the money would go down the drain and they couldn't ask for a refund. So we felt like,
No, sorry. So you accepted 2 payments totaling $112,000
yes,
from GC strategy.
we accepted those payments.
And those 2 payments were how far apart?
They were a month and a half apart, I believe.
They're a month and a half apart. So once you took the first payment, then the second payment came from GC strategy. That payment was also accepted and processed.
Yes, it was paid late but accepted.
So does that show an intent or acceptance that there is a contract with GC strategy, at least as a processing agent for this contract with CBSA?
I would not agree with that because this was directed by the CBSA and we are a small company. We don't have the right to fight back with the CBSA and tell them what they can and cannot do.
So once CBSA reached out to you and said, hey, look, we love your application, we want to do it, and we come and do a pilot and proof of concept. What was the proof of concept supposed to accomplish?
Proof of concept was supposed to establish the solution within the CBSA and help their own individuals. It was supposed to run for 6 months, after which the CBSA would then sell enterprise licenses for Butler's solution to the entire government of Canada.
Great. So did you have modification, or the contract, as you shared with us, is $350,000 for licenses for X number of employees at CBSA?
So we were never even allowed to deploy the solution within the CBSA because the project was cut when we reported misconduct. But for the portion that we did start work on, that was for the configuration of our existing solution.
Okay, great. So there's a solution, it needs to be configured. You partially configured that for you to be able to go through proof of concept. Then you realize misconduct. You inform CBSA. CBSA said, hold on a sec, I'm going to pull this contract out.
Yes, and we fully configured it, actually. We trained
You
it on all
fully
the...
configured it,
yes.
great. But we never got to the point of demo and implementation and et cetera. So you delivered a fully configured application to CBSA.
So we did demonstrate it to the CBSA, but we
Okay.
did not implement it with CBSA employees.
So during this process of how long this process took? 5 months, 3 months?
It
2
was
months?
supposed to take 6 months. It took almost an entire year.
An entire year. Okay, so during an entire year, you were configuring a system, you're rolling out, you're enhancing, if I may say, to the requirement, and then you never got a chance because it got pulled away to be able to actually roll it out.
That's correct. We
And-
configured
and
it, but we did not.
The total agreed number is $350,000.
Yes, through a
Okay.
fixed price contract.
First,
That should have been a contract.
You also mentioned another 50 and another 20 for a total of 420. Did I misunderstand it, or because we have a stream of 350, 336, 112, another stream of 350, 50, and 20. So can you help me with that?
So, because we try to be as objective as possible, I'm going to give you a couple of insights here. Just to kind of poll the chat. Anyone that does not know what a proof of concept is, just give me a 1 in the chat.
I can set up an actual thing. Hold on. Just give me 2 seconds. Do you know what a proof of concept is? Yes
Okay,
and no.
so-
And there we go.
So Fox is doing a quick poll. If we
There we
could just
go.
see who does not know what a proof of concept is. Okay, so we got some no's.
Yeah, so you'll see the blue poll at the top of
Okay.
the chat screen. You can just hit yes or no.
So we got a bunch of people that doesn't know what a proof of concept is. Okay, perfect. No problem, because it's not exactly used in day-to-day language. So a proof of concept is a term used when you're either designing a product or you are designing, in this case, an app, and it is almost production ready, meaning it has most of the features, it works, you can demonstrate that it works, but it's not quite ready for showtime. If you're talking about a product, it may not have all of the safety considerations in place. It may not be the right color, but it's functional. So that's a proof of concept. Beta test is another kind of it's actually right before a beta test, kind of like an alpha. Even alpha, it's between an alpha and a beta. Anyway, so that's that. Now, the one problem that Bottler has, and they haven't acknowledged it, they haven't been asked about it, but they haven't acknowledged it, is they should not have done anything without a written contract. I imagine it's because the lady is, younger in her career, hasn't had a ton of experience, which is fine. But you learn very quickly that you do no work without something signed on the dotted line, because if not, there's no obligation. So they go back to CBSA and say, you owe us money. CBSA is going to say, what money? We don't have a contract with you. And technically, CBSA is right. So these guys, I don't think they're going to get paid this money. They could get paid just because this may blow up into a scandal. But legally, there is no obligation to pay them because there is no contract. So now what they can do is sue for fraud, identity theft, and all of this stuff. So they could potentially get damages out of all of this. But that's the one problem that they have, is they are coming and giving testimony, but they chose to work on this with no contract whatsoever. So that is a weakness that they have. Those that are longtime listeners, that we try to be as objective as possible, and I just want to make sure that everyone understands that. So they built this proof of concept, they gave it over, and they didn't have a contract in place whatsoever. So there we are. That's their one weak point that they're standing on, but it doesn't detract from all of the other crimes that were committed.
Absolutely. So when we were
Very
approached,
briefly, please.
sorry.
Very briefly, please.
Okay, we gave the price of $350,000 for our work. We received a contract back that was not even with us, between GCS and Dalian. That would be $336 for Bottler. On top of that $336, they added another 20% as commission. So the value of the contract ended up at $420,000 before tax. That was given to Dalian. And GC Strategies had originally told us that on top of our $350, they wanted to add $50,000 as a commission.
Okay. I'll have another term I'll ask. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Kusi, please.
Thank you, Chair. It's very evident that everyone in this room should be concerned, including the government, as it's very evident that there is some type of there definitely seems to be some type of systematic problem here at play, and that's absolutely what we have to get to the bottom of within this committee. And in addition to the large amounts, which my colleagues have mentioned, I saw that GC Strategies has contracts, in fact, with more than 20 departments across the government. So there is no way that this is not systematic, and we absolutely have to get to the root of not only what happened there, but where it's happening elsewhere within the government. And that is most definitely the objective here. Before I move on to my next line of questioning, I just wanted to clarify for a final time your communication with Mr. Ozowski. He said initially he didn't have any meetings with you. Then in the most recent meeting, he retracted that. He stated that he had just the Teams meeting with you. Is that accurate?
Had with him was the Teams meeting. It was delayed a few times because of the pandemic, but then it took place on Teams, and then we had email communications with him on top of that.
Oh, that's a problem. That's a problem. Wow. Okay, that's a problem, Mr. Oswowski, because for those of you that watched our video on the testimony of Mr. John Oswowski, which is the president at the time that this all went down. He was the president of the Canada Border Services Agency. He decided to, quote unquote, retire
for 3 months.
For 3 months in, I think it was June or July of 2022, and then went on to work at another job. So your retirement didn't last too long, did it? Or were you asked to leave? He was summoned to committee, and he was asked multiple times. He was getting very annoyed that he was getting asked multiple times if he had any communication. So he said in his initial testimony way back in 2022, December 8th, he said he had no communication with any of this. He barely even knew what was going on. And then it was proven that he was actually in a Teams meeting. And now we're learning from Ms. Dutt that there was email communication between Bottler and Mr. Oswowski. That's going to be a problem for him.
Okay, so in an effort for us to get to the bottom of this, we've asked for the documentation, but we have to get to the who. Who is behind this? Who is behind this within CBSA? Who else might possibly be behind this within the government? So which government officials did you talk to in pursuit of the CBSA contract, just for the pilot itself?
This is the money question, folks, and I hope they have some clear answers. Cameron McDonald's going to be one, that's for sure. So who else indeed, Stephanie?
So we were informed by the CBSA that they intended to take this enterprise throughout the government. And in support of that, GC Strategies took us to meetings with various government departments and officials. So I believe you're asking for names.
Please.
There was Philippe Johnston at Transport Canada. There was Mark Briard and Paul Gerard that were at Treasury Board of Canada. There was an individual, I believe his name was Daniel Gaudreau at the CRA at the time. And then there are some other individuals that I'm not recalling them right now, but I can certainly provide them to you after.
So of those names, Mark Brouillard is a key one, because in the Globe and Mail article, we looked him up, he was actually the interim Chief Information Officer for the Government of Canada. So each agency has their own Chief Information Officer. You can see all of that on the government website. But above all of that is the Chief Information Officer for the entire government. That was Mark Brouillard. Now, that doesn't mean he's done anything shady, but that's the people that that Bottler was exposed to as part of this whole enterprise.
So in terms of networking, that's huge.
Very, very huge. If you get the Chief Information Officer of the Government of Canada to like what you're doing, then all Crown corporations are pretty much going to be guaranteed to be using your product.
Sure, that would be very helpful. Now, you mentioned that this piece that you were working on was to be used as a pilot and perhaps implemented across other departments as a technical solution for C56. Were any other departments indicated to you where it might potentially be used if it went well at CBSA?
So it was supposed to be used by the entire government for Bill C-65, and that's why the CBSA wanted to be the ones. They said that they were the pathfinders. They wanted to get the credit for it. So everybody we spoke with was for the same implementation of that same solution that was being found or being identified as a pathfinder by the CBSA.
Okay, Pathfinder is a term that is, the government loves to invent all of this new language. But if you've heard the term beta tester or pilot group, meaning the test group or the test agency, if you will, that would initially use a product to determine how it would be rolled out to the rest of the organization or to the rest of the government, that's what Pathfinder means in government speak.
Okay, so we have names such as Cameron McDonald. Obviously, Mr. Dewan was here the other day. The then president, Mr. Osowski, the now president, Ms. O'Gorman. Were there any other officials at CBSA that you communicated with?
Well, Antonio Utano was the one that I sent the report to, and we were told by Mr. Firth that he does a lot of business with Mr. Utano. There was also the individual I named today, which was Diane Daly, that she stepped in after we submitted the report.
And there's a list of individuals within the CBSA who were engaged with the Bottler project one way or another. So Mr. McDonald specifically gave us some names. For example, he mentioned that Pierre Lessard has the values and ethics piece of this task authorization, the individual who's now in charge of the investigation of this file within the CBSA. So there's a long list of individuals who were involved in this pilot.
Was there any mention of a minister or communication with a minister as to a ministerial decision for this pilot project?
Conservatives now trying to tie it into Trudeau's cabinet. That's what they're trying to do here. I don't know if they'll get there, but I think they're hoping. They're hoping for a link to Trudeau's cabinet, because once it gets tied to Trudeau's cabinet, then they can tie it to Trudeau, because that's part of his elected government. The thing you need to understand about these agencies is there's many government agencies.
And they're not staffed by politicians, right? It's just regular people who work for the government.
Correct. They are companies for all intents and purposes. They are non-elected officials, but there's a bit of a caveat there. The heads of these agencies are appointed by the government. So John Osowski, Aaron O'Goran, the past and current president of the Canada Border Services agency, they would have been appointed by the Liberal government. They're not elected, but they're appointed. And they're paid a salary and all of this on top of that. Sometimes they're called presidents, but their official position in the government is a deputy minister or an assistant deputy minister. Even though minister is in the title, it's not related to cabinet.
Pretty much, they're like the CEO of that government entity.
Yes.
Yeah.
For this pilot project specifically, no, but for the enterprise licenses that were the bigger licenses for the Government of Canada, yes.
Okay. Who, please?
It was Deputy Minister Chrystia Freeland.
Okay.
Boom!
Whoa!
Chrystia Freeland. Chrystia Freeland. Now, again, it doesn't mean that Chrystia Freeland is involved in any of the shadiness, but the fact that she has now been named in this has to be taken a look at. Has to be looked into.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Were you consistently communicating with Mr. Firth? Was he your only non-governmental contact relative to these contracts or to this contract?
That is correct, yes.
Okay. You mentioned that Mr. Firth brought in Mr. McDonald as well as Mr. Briard. Was there any other party who was involved in these conversations, in the middle person conversation?
Well, for the pilot, no, it was just Mr. Firth. But for the bigger enterprise software, yes, it was an individual by the name of Vaughn Brennan, who Mr. Firth stated that he rubbed shoulder with every ADM in town, and he was brought in as a consultant.
Okay, as a consultant.
Remember, ADM is Assistant Deputy Minister. DM, Deputy Minister. These are the heads of these government agencies.
Consultant.
That is our time, I'm afraid.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Ms. Atwin, please, for 5.
There we go. And thank you so much for being here today. I think we're all just trying to wrap our minds around what's occurred here and how to move forward. So I'm just looking at one of the reports of misconduct that's submitted by Bottler AI. An allegation that was made was that Christian Firth of GC Strategies approached you on behalf of Cameron McDonald, the then Director General of CBSA, about securing this contract. So there was a statement that says Mr. Firth organized meetings between Mr. Bottler and Mr. McDonald, who advised them on how to pitch their software to John Osowski, the president of the CBSA. Can you talk about what the nature of those conversations were? Kind of about how to pitch your software? What are the tips or tools of the trade or the advice that was offered to you?
Well, there were. So we had a few different interactions with Mr. McDonald, who were very hands-on about how the software should be pitched and how we should technically position the software in a way that it would be implemented by President Osowski, the former president. So we had a meeting actually at the CBSA's offices where the meeting began, where we just pitched the software very, the same way that we pitch it to everybody. And Mr. McDonald basically stopped us and told us that this is the direction that you should go, and really basically gave us some sort of hints on what is the value that the software should bring to the government, and why the president should be interested in the software, and why should it be implemented.
Have you ever experienced something like that before?
No.
So you also stated in some of the documents that you provided that you had never heard of Dalian before. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And that you'd only given information to Cordix Technology Consulting under the belief that it was handling your security clearance. What gave you that belief?
So we received an email from Christian Firth that was forwarded, and it was an email with directions on how to conduct a security clearance. And at the bottom of that email, there was just a very brief, I think it was one-line sentence saying that for any information, just refer to security@cordix.com. that was the first time that we saw basically any name of Coredex. And we followed that instruction, and there was a link on that email. We followed the link, and immediately we received an email from the hiring manager, who was Antonio Utano. So at that point, we thought that probably the security is being conducted by Coredex. And the reason that we were misled to believe was we were never provided any information on the security clearance process. So even at the end, when we signed the security briefing forms, there is a clause on those forms that basically the organization that holds the security clearances should brief us on what the security clearances mean. And I believe that they signed that clause, but we were never briefed, or we were never provided any information on how the system works, how the security clearing, how the security screening works in general. And we were didn't even provide it with a reference letter, or I think it's something that they call it requesting letter for the security clearances. We were provided verbal instructions to go and conduct our security clearances at a fingerprinting office. We approached this office, we went to this office, and the person who was conducting the security clearance was surprised and told us they never saw anything like that someone comes with a verbal contract for security clearances. At the beginning, they told us that they can't really process the request because we don't have an official document. And then we showed them the email that we received from Antonio Utano, the hiring manager. And then we ended up doing the security screening, and it went through. But all that time we were just thinking that Coredex is just someone who's doing an entity that is conducting the background check on us, which is common. Like, we also use the same entities for our own employees.
Okay, so a lot there. First off, this is not a fact. This is now an opinion. I firmly believe that Mr. McDonald was getting pieces of revenue from GC Strategies over this whole thing and 4 years. Either that, or GC Strategies, Christian Firth, has so much dirt on Cameron McDonald that he can make him dance and do whatever he wants. But I don't think that's the case, considering the relationship that's kind of been outlined here, where Christian was wanting the Bottler crew to talk up Cameron McDonald in front of his bosses and all of this stuff, and that Cameron was taking them aside and coaching them on how to pitch this, which he shouldn't have been doing. And because this would have led to potentially a $20 million contract for them if they roll it out across the government. So I think that Cameron McDonald is literally, not even metaphorically, I think he's literally crapping his pants right now. I think he's screwed. So.
And on that note, thank you everybody in the chat. We've got 907 likes. That's a definite record for us.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, everyone. And if you haven't subscribed, please make sure you subscribe to the channel. I've seen some people say that YouTube keeps unsubscribing them. I don't know why that happens.
Could be a bug.
Could be a bug. Yeah. But make sure you stay subscribed so you get our new content notifications.
And it's clear to me where Dalian comes in, because they were what appears to be the flow through as an Indigenous-led organization, which is deeply disturbing to me that that's going to be used as in such a manner. But where does Coredex come in? Are they often working together? Is that something that they were pitched to as a dual kind of company, or?
So we really
I'm afraid that is our 5 minutes. Perhaps you can get back to us in writing or next round. Ms. Vignola for 2.5, please.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I still find it unbelievable that for the surface of the application, 8,190 days were billed. That just knocks me over, because at one time back in the days of HTML. I made a website. This was back in 1999. I built a website and it only took me a few hours. I built 40 hours. But I just wanted to mention that because I just can't believe the number of hours that were billed. So here's my question. After you began this disclosure process, did anything strange begin occurring? Once you had given the document to Miss Erin Ogerman, did anything strange happen, or did everything remain normal? Thanks.
As I mentioned in December of 2022, after we submitted the misconduct report to the CBSA, my emails were hacked, and any records of emails that were sent from Christian Firth directly to me were mysteriously deleted from my inbox. Since then, we have an email tracking solution called MailTrack, and through that solution MailTrack, we are able to see which emails are being accessed, and only emails that are related to this misconduct and this wider misconduct that we've uncovered are being surreptitiously and suspiciously accessed at different times. So it is clear that my and Amir's communications are under surveillance.
Wow.
Whoa.
That's significant.
That's another charge, everybody. That's called corporate espionage. That's serious. That's a white-collar crime. Holy.
And if you're doing it to cover up a crime, would that not be obstruction of justice as well? I mean, we're not lawyers, but like, this just keeps getting worse and worse.
Yeah, the crimes just keep coming. Like, so that's corporate espionage, most likely. There is a crime for destruction of evidence. Holy. So someone has broken into their mail server and is trying to surgically remove these emails. Wow. This is getting crazy, folks. And awesome that they have that software, because now they can show the logs from that software to show.
It's only these particular emails that are being targeted.
Yeah. From both of them.
Donc, vos courriels, selon MailTrack.
So according to MailTrack, your email is being read by someone other than you, and only emails on GC strategies, Dalian, and other keywords are being looked at. Is that what I understand?
So anything related to the misconduct, so not necessarily just GC strategies or Dalian, but also reports that we're sending, communications with CBSA, communications with PSPC, with Treasury Board Secretariat, with any associated entity with this larger systemic government corruption that we have uncovered, those communications are regularly being accessed.
Wow.
That's extremely surgical.
This is huge. Like this thing that these two people are uncovering, this is astronomical.
Yeah.
This might be bigger than like SNC-Lavalin in terms of like reach and cost and...
Oh, it's far bigger, yeah.
This is huge.
It's far bigger. And SNC-Lavalin, like that was like a corporate type of a crime, but this is on a different level. Different level. I'm just I'm taken aback, like many of you. Like, you're just shocked, and I'm just trying to process all of this in my head. So, but what gets me is it's not just okay. So usually when you have some sort of attack on email, as many of you know, if you work in organizations, your IT team will most likely tell you that, most of these attacks are automated, right? You'll click on something will happen, and then, there's this automated attack that gets into your system, and then someone will finally, be able to access it. This is a person that is literally snooping through and accessing specific emails, because it was a very important question that that the lady asked her, so it's anything to do with GC Strategies, Dalian, and Cortex. And she said, no, not everything. It's only to do with the misconduct material. That's extremely targeted. That's not something that a bot can do. That's something that a person would need to do. That's insane.
Thank you.
Étrange. Merci.
Yeah. Mr. Johns?
Done an ATIP to see, look at the invoices that you've been paid,
Yes, actually, I do have an ATIP, and I would be happy to table that.
and it showed you getting paid.
So the ATIP was from Dalian, and it showed that they were billing for the individuals that were conducting the work, and it was for myself. And then there were 2 other names that were redacted. From the TA, we know those names were for Amir and also for an individual named
They didn't
Patrick.
show an invoice to you, paying you.
No, we only learned through an ATIP.
That's okay.
Another term there. So ATIP. ATIP stands for Access to Information Privacy. So you can put forth an ATIP to ask for any information related to yourself within the government as it relates to a specific thing. So they were able to get some documents through this ATIP process, and it's a non-negotiable process. They can't say no. The government has to give you that information.
They can give it to you redacted, though, which is what happened in this case.
Well, they're not supposed to.
Well,
they can give it to you
they
redacted. They're supposed to only give it to you redacted if there's information in there that is not relevant to your request.
In terms of CBSA, are they using your software?
No, they are not. They stopped the pilot.
Mr. Brennan, can you speak a little bit about who Mr. Brennan is?
So Mr. Brennan was an individual that was introduced to us by Christian Firth in 2019. He was brought in as a self-styled political insider that was referred to kind of as a mentor for Mr. Firth. When we were discussing that the CBSA wanted to take this enterprise, he checked the pricing of $23 million per year with Mr. Brennan, and Mr. Brennan said this is a drop in the bucket. He's also the individual who wrote the case for Shared Services Canada for $5 billion based on what we were made aware.
Mr. Chair, is it, well, at first, how long would it take you very long to produce a list of names? You talked about Mr. Lessard, Mr. Briere, Goudreau, Mr. Otano, Ms. Daly, obviously the key players that were directly related. Would it take you 24 hours to come up with a list of names that you've dealt with on this?
If you could give us maybe until Monday so we can get back to Montreal and compile everything.
Okay, great. Do I need a motion or anything to ask, Mr. Chair, so they provide a list so we can add witnesses? Because I think we need to hear clearly from the people directly related to this. Yeah.
Uh-oh. So, NDP gentleman here, I have to give him credit. He is suggesting to the committee, give us all of those names within the government agencies that you worked with, and we are going to call them as witnesses in front of us. I can't wait to hear what this Mr. Utano has to say, because he initially ignored the original complaint.
That would be great.
Sure.
That would
And
be great.
would I send this to the clerk?
To the clerk,
Okay.
yes, absolutely. So you talked about the CBSA systems around security. I mean, we keep hearing from public officials, they've reassured us over and over again that the use of outside consultants and contractors don't pose a significant threat to Canada's data and security. Can you talk about, how you feel about that, given that you weren't given any proper clearance or the NDA about Canada's security clearances right now? A lot of people's data right at your fingertips.
Well,
Need about a 10-second answer, sorry.
Sure. We were cleared. We had security clearances, but I find it very, very disturbing.
John's, is it Mr. Barrett or Mr. Generals, please, for 5?
Thank you, Chair. And I should have said at the beginning of my last round, thank you very much for being here and your courageous and important testimony. You've identified, confirmed, and provided evidence of systemic government corruption in procurement. This includes ArriveCAN. It goes beyond ArriveCAN, though, and it's deeply disturbing and something that our committee must get to the bottom of. I want to ask, to your knowledge, who in elected office or who among government political staff were aware of your concerns, and when and how did they become aware of those concerns?
Good question.
That's the MPs, folks.
Yeah. So, okay. So this is what they're trying to do now. This is very strategic by the Conservatives. They are now trying to demonstrate that if they can, elected officials within the Liberal government, Liberal MPs, knew that this was going on and did nothing. And what, if that is the case, what they will then try to do, not in this committee, but in the future at some point, they are then going to link that back to the fact that they knew about the Chinese election interference and chose to do nothing then as well. And they were going to say this has been a pattern with this government, and they're going to try and blow it wide open, because then they'll be able to say, this isn't just once, this is twice. What else are they doing? So this is very strategic by the Conservatives. Great question by Genuous.
Are being made on behalf of Canada based on the contracts that are the laws and the regulations that PSPC has. A statement on behalf of Canada is made on behalf of the Minister of Public Services and Procurement. We also know from different ATIPs that there were redactions for the involvement of ministers and ministerial staff, though we cannot speak to who those ministers or ministerial staff were because of the redactions.
That's interesting.
Wow.
So there were ministers potentially on these documents, but they were redacted.
Now, whether or not they were directly involved, we don't know. We don't know who they were, but I mean, that's still significant.
Yeah. And for those wondering, these two have immunity at this committee. So they are prevented from the government coming after them because of the Whistleblower Act.
But you know there was involvement of ministers and ministerial staff. You don't know who or how because of redactions, but you know they were involved. Is that correct?
That is correct, and I believe Ms. O'Gorman said that she also briefed the Minister of Public Safety, so I'd assume that that would be one of the individuals that would have been aware.
And who was that, everybody?
Well, I'll tell you, he's sitting on Mendocino Island right now.
He's sitting on Marco Mendocino Island. Wow.
Yikes.
Oh, Marco.
Yikes.
Oh, Marco. That's a problem. That's a big problem. Big problem right there. We now have knowledge of an MP, not just an MP, a cabinet minister in Trudeau's government that knew something was going on because Aaron Ogerman told him. Get ready, everyone.
Oh, I bet he's going to say, like, oh, I didn't know. My staff didn't tell me.
Yeah,
just
my
like
staff
the
didn't tell
Bernardo
me.
thing.
And nobody tells me anything.
Also, we need one more like to get to 950. Who's it going to be?
There you go.
Thank you. And did you have any conversations with, did you send emails to, did you seek to notify any ministers, members of parliament, political staff along the way?
So before we reported the misconduct, I had briefed Minister Miller and Minister Lametti during a press conference on our justice work that we were working on the CBSA project, but we did not involve ministers directly because we were already receiving responses on behalf of Canada, which would indicate that the ministers were providing their response through the use of the term Canada.
Okay, help me understand what that, you said you spoke to them at a press conference. Just help me understand what that interaction was like and what you had said to the ministers about your concerns.
So it was a press conference in March 2021, I believe, for the announcement of our initiative with the Department of Justice's Legal Aid Directorate for the citizens-facing solution. And before, I believe it was before the press conference began, there was a few minutes, so I was chatting with both ministers and I had told them, oh, well, we're working on this. We're really excited because we're working on a larger harassment solution beyond just the sexual harassment in the workplaces.
Okay, so just to be clear, you were notifying them of your work on the project, but you weren't at the time advising them of any specific complaint. So if I understood that right, so are there points along the way in which you provided information about your complaints, your concerns about the systemic corruption issues? At what point would from which you know they have become aware of this?
So from our own communications directly, when we started submitting reports to PSPC, which was in this summer, starting from May, we started addressing Canada. When we address Canada, that means we're addressing the Minister of PSPC. That's when we started direct communications, but we believe that they had knowledge before this. So based on what Mr. Gorman said, I believe it was in December or January that she told the Minister of Public Safety. And we're not sure, based on the redacted ATIPs, what time, when exactly, but the timeline of that ATIP is around summer and September of 2022. So that was when the redacted minister and ministerial involvement would have been.
Okay, thank you. I would like to request unredacted versions of those ATIPs for this committee. Could you just, for the benefit of the committee and the clerk, describe what those ATIPs were?
Sure. So I can also provide to the clerk the ATIP numbers, so you can ask for the redacted versions, but I believe this one specifically was an ATIP of an ATIP. So I had sent an ATIP to the CBSA asking for records of communications made by the CBSA's Diane Daly outside of a contractual relationship with us. They had refused to release the records because they stated on record that we were actually contractors and those contracts were held. We served the parties with legal notices. They were not able to provide proof of those contracts. And because they didn't release those ATIPs, I ATIP'd that ATIP, and that's how we...
Okay, is that enough information for the clerk to make the document request, or sounds like not? Okay, so please
Where are you
provide us.
requesting it from? Are you requesting the emails from Ms.
I'll
Dutt?
give you the ATIP numbers, and then you can ask for those
Okay.
unredacted.
We'll have to wait, I think, till we have those ATIP numbers before we make those requests. But if you provide us with the ATIP numbers, we will. I will then seek the agreement of the committee to request the unredacted version.
Okay. Does everybody know why Genuis is so excited about asking for these unredacted ATIPs? It's because what he's expecting to find is the unredacted minister name on these ATIPs, which would be a member of parliament sitting in Trudeau's cabinet. That's why he wants this. And then he wants to be able to say, look, everybody, look, the ATIP request was in, what'd she say, the summer of 2022, and Liberals did nothing. Allowed a criminal enterprise to continue not under their noses, in their government, and do nothing, which is now in the hands of the RCMP. So this ATIP request is extremely important because this now ties it up to government officials. The initial story here that Fox and I saw, it looked like it was pretty contained to the agency.
Yeah, like when we did the ArriveScam video that we put out a few weeks ago, we had said, we don't think it's actually tied to Trudeau this time.
Yeah.
That it was all civil servants, but it might not be just civil servants. There could be elected MPs involved.
This now explains why they've been trying to shut it down. Okay? We were confused. We're like, why are they so resistant to this? If I'm Trudeau and this is just localized to this agency and this guy Cameron McDonald, why wouldn't you just point at that and say, look, I am throwing this guy to the wolves. This is transparency. This is what I've been talking about. And he could take it as a win. But if there's people in his cabinet that knew about this and didn't do anything, that explains a lot. It explains why they shut down that Auditor General committee meeting. Explains a lot.
I just wonder how much deeper this rabbit hole goes.
Well, I think we're almost at the end, so let's continue watching.
Of those ATIPs. And I hope I'll have the support of the committee to work to get to the bottom of that. I finally wanted to just ask quickly, this raises not just corruption concerns, but also significant security concerns for me. If we have ghost contractors, we don't know who they are. You have people talking back and forth about them having dirt on other people. What kind of security concerns does this raise from your perspective about Government of Canada information?
I have to be the wet blanket and say we're out of time again.
Brief response.
No, we're past time, I'm afraid. Mr. Souza, you're up, please,
Thank
for
you,
5.
guys. Thank you again. So just to clarify, and I know some of the correspondence, some of the discussions we're having now is about your pilot and about your work on that pilot. And the work that has been contracted, CBSA through GC Strategies.
Calling it right now. Wouldn't it be funny if he was one of the guys that was in the unredacted emails?
That would be hilarious.
Right?
And you know, I would be really angry because, again, Liberals tied to all these scandals, but we'll see.
Right? It would be so funny, but so irritating if Souza was one of the names that actually knew about this.
I understand you correctly. Why would you why would you do the work without a contract?
Okay. Didn't I say exactly this? That the leg that they don't have to stand on is they didn't have something in writing. So this is what he's going after now.
We were continuously engaged with the CBSA verbally, asking them to rework the contracting into a clean contract.
How
and they
you,
had specifically
do you
told
have
us they would.
correspondence between you and CBSA?
Yes,
but
and
CBSA didn't contract you.
CBSA told us that they would clean up the contracting after we raised our concerns that the contracting was not properly executed,
This is after you provided the misconduct.
both before and after.
So you had correspondence with CBSA prior, you had discussions with CBSA directly prior to the misconduct, and you had agreements with them?
We had no agreements with them. We were working with them in pure faith, which they are aware of, and we were in their liaisons were working directly with Bottler.
They weren't working through GC Strategies?
No.
No. So I was the individual who worked with the CBSA. So I was working with the CBSA all this time. So CBSA, the work began as early as November 2020. So I started working with the CBSA. There's no contract. There's nothing. We started working. And as of February 2021, and this is before we submitted the misconduct. So the CBSA started we started talking about how the pilot should be implemented, how they shared some non-public data with us about their harassment. And we really was working really well with the CBSA without a contract. And GC Strategies was not involved at any stage.
That makes sense, right? You're doing work on behalf of GC Strategies, who's contracted you out to do this work. And you have to work alongside the client, and the client in this case was CBSA. So you had to continuously work to make that happen. So that makes sense.
That is incorrect.
And did they dispute your work?
Well, nobody ever disputed the work, and we were not working on behalf of GC Strategies, just to be clear.
That's who the contract was with.
There was no contract with GC Strategies.
The CBSA didn't have a contract with you. They had a contract.
They did not have a contract with GC Strategies either in this matter.
Well, so who did they have a contract with?
Dalian and Cordix.
Yeah, okay, so that was the payment process.
Yes, and our identities were stolen in the execution of the TA with Dalian and Cordix.
Did you finish the work?
We did finish the work. That was our portion, yes. And
Can you believe that? Well, I can. But she just said, yes, our identities were stolen and used in the TA, the task authorization with Cordex. Souza doesn't even blink, goes on to his next question.
Well, because he doesn't want to acknowledge it.
No, he doesn't. No. Wow.
we submitted that work to them.
And they didn't process, they didn't use it.
Well, they didn't implement the actual solution, which was the actual work that they were supposed to implement.
When you had these meetings, did the Dalian or GC strategy, were they involved in these meetings too?
No, they were never involved in anything.
Just you guys. And so you don't know why you would have done this without you just did this on a handshake.
Okay, that question was important. They skipped over it, but it really proves the point of the bottler folks. So usually when you're working with a vendor and they bring in another vendor to help them, both vendors are at every meeting. Why? Because the original vendor is bringing in the next vendor, subcontracting it out, but everyone's name is always on the contract. And there's a representative from each vendor always at every meeting to make sure that everyone is abiding by the contract properly. So the fact that none of these other agencies were ever at any of the meetings, it proves credence to Bottler's point that they said, no, our technically our arrangement was directly with CBSA. Nobody was ever there. So that was actually quite important, even though it was glossed over. Because this guy is trying to keep all of this outside of the government. He's trying to paint this as, oh, your problem is with GC Strategies. Your problem is with Dalian, not with the government. We're fine. Our process is fine. We're innocent. It's these shady contractors. That's the picture he is trying to paint. And Bottler is doing a pretty good job at preventing that from happening.
You didn't have a contract.
Well, it's more than a handshake because we have a trail of evidence of how we were directed directly by a contracting authority from the CBSA, who has contracting authority. So it's. So
I'm going to get it right. CBSA has contracting authority, and they didn't contract you.
They brought us in to do the work. So the work was.
You said they used GC Strategies to bring.
No, they didn't. They used GC Strategies to receive payments from Coradix. So GC Strategies is basically a ghost contractor. They don't exist on any legal documentation, but according to the Diane Daly email that was released today, CBSA insisted that the payment should go through GC Strategies, who they're a ghost. They don't exist.
The contract was Dalian.
Dalian and Coradix.
So we had a contract with them, and they contracted you. But
No,
you
they
didn't.
did not
But you didn't have a
contract
contract. You didn't do.
No,
you
no.
just did it because they asked you to do it.
So essentially, at one out of nowhere, GC Strategies came and said that Dalian and Coradix were brought in as a pass-through, and they will be the one who will basically invoice the CBSA.
And this is all about the pilot project.
All about the pilot project.
It didn't go on, but yeah, okay. So you weren't involved with ArriveCAN at all, in none of those activities. They were, because they were contracted with CBSA, but you weren't.
Sorry, you can hear me giggling over here because it's like, oh, you weren't involved with ArriveCAN at all. Like, we're not talking about ArriveCAN right now, but he's got to bring it back to, oh, so this wasn't involved with ArriveCAN, just so that the Liberals can say, well, this isn't our fault. It had nothing to do with ArriveCAN.
Yeah, he's an idiot because what he doesn't understand, and I want to make this as clear as I possibly can. So, the government issued a contract to Dalian and Coradix for ArriveCAN. At some point, and now this was after Bottler started doing their work on their pilot project. But the money that they were paid with came out of the ArriveCAN contract. So they weren't being paid to do ArriveCAN work, but they were paid out of the ArriveCAN contract. You can't do that. That's fraud. That's the problem. Okay? So if you're using a contract to pay somebody for work not related to that contract, and then you're invoicing the government for that money, you are committing fraud. That's the problem.
But these identities that were stolen were executed through a TA that was used for ArriveCAN. And there's criminal theft of our identities on a contract with ArriveCAN.
And it's appropriate to have that investigated, right? And that's what's being done. I presume that's what's being done. It's certainly not about ArriveCAN because they're not investigating ArriveCAN apparently.
Well, ArriveCAN is just a name. So ArriveCAN, if you think about it, ArriveCAN is a trail of contracts and a work that was built by GC Strategies and other contractors. So we have an application called ArriveCAN, and contracts in those applications are being investigated. So ArriveCAN by itself cannot be investigated because it's just a name. Like no name can be. For example, Bottler can be investigated. Acts with respect to contracting of Bottler or contracting can be investigated. And so when we're looking at any sort of investigation, I assume that the contracts that were engaged in our pilot will be investigated. That's my assumption. And I don't want to.
That is our time, I'm afraid.
Well,
sorry, that is our time for this round. It's Mr. Barrett, please, and then Mr. Shawari.
I want to circle back to my questions from earlier, and you had listed off a bunch of positions of people that Mr. Firth had said that were part of his friend and relationship network. Are you able to tell me the names of any of those people?
Sure. So I think we had an agreement to table some of those names,
Okay.
but so Mr. Philip Johnston, who was the CIO of Transport Canada, he actually approved the pilot, but the COVID started, so we couldn't start. Mark Brouillard, the CTO of Canada, and there's a long list of other individuals who were engaged with the team.
I would start quickly add to that. There is an individual only known, referred to us by his first name of Todd, who was an associate of Mr. First that worked at PSPC, that he referred to as the person that would be in charge of the entire enterprise rollout of Bottler and would essentially act as the sales agent for that transaction for the entire enterprise rollout.
Okay. And was Kelly Belanger ever named as one of the people who was part of Mr. Firth's network?
So we had a meeting with Minh Duan and several directors general in December of 2019, and Kelly Belanger was present. As we were walking into that meeting, Firth had told us, "Oh, Kelly is one of my, I know her really well. She's really good. We work together."
And was she was Miss Belanger the acting CIO of CBSA later when you sent your whistleblower report?
That is correct.
Okay. You mentioned earlier, and Mr. Jennis asked about this, about how these players had dirt on each other. Can you expand on that? Maybe just take a minute to expand on that. What does that mean?
We don't know exactly what kind of compromising material they have, but I assume when, for example, when a resume is being forged and is submitted as part of a TA, and when a contracting authority signs a task authorization that has a forged resume there, that's something that contracting authority is basically could be used for extortion. On the other end of it, if, let's say, Mr. Firth conducts, engages in similar conduct, so let's say forges a resume and submitted and gets caught, then the contracting authority would have some compromising material on Mr. Firth that then could direct Mr. Firth to do other criminal activities.
Obviously, the prospect of individuals collecting compromat about people who presumably all have government security clearances is concerning in the context of these apps, which have access to Canadians' personal and private, their medical information, particularly in an age where we're dealing with foreign interference by state actors. Surely if the mutually assured destruction, as you described it, could be used with respect to individuals who are engaged in alleged criminality, it could be used by foreign state actors to extract access to or extract the information about Canadians or to gain access to our networks. Would that be fair to say?
That would be very accurate, and an individual who doesn't, who's basically engaged in conduct that is criminal is the perfect target for any sort of foreign interference operation. And when bad actors try to recruit, they won't recruit a normal public servant. They go to someone with authority, someone like a contracting authority who has access to systems, to information, to data, and then that individual would be the perfect target for to be recruited.
Remember how I said that they're going to try and tie this back to foreign interference?
Yep, that was smooth. And you know what? It's accurate as well. It's not outside the realm of possibility.
Right? So here you go. And yes, Justin, we need 14 more likes to get to 1,000. That would be absolutely phenomenal. So thank you everybody for sticking with us. There's about I'd say a little over 15 minutes left of the actual footage, so we're on the home stretch.
Okay. Thanks very much.
Mr. Jory?
Thank you. So, Mr. Morv, seems to be that you are the one who were doing most of the heavy lifting during the pilot configuration, because you were away on personal reasons. Okay, so I'm going to summarize and I'm going to move away because I got to ground this for our team when we go back. So, good relationship with CBSA. Partnership that goes way back before the actual start, sometimes in February of 2020. You work well together to configure the system, and understanding during all this time was a contract will be formed with CBSA. That's what you believe. Then you were informed that your contract by a contracting person from CBSA that you're going to now have to go through Dalian, correct?
That is not correct. So,
okay, so
I don't know how many times they have to explain this, but this is getting silly. The Liberals are either stupid or they're just wasting time. And
I don't think they're stupid. I think they're just trying to push their agenda and also filibuster a bit.
Well, there is no filibustering just because it's a lot of time. So
yeah.
Anyway.
GC Strategies was the entity who said that the contract will go through Dalian.
Okay.
Not the CBSA. So CBSA told us you have to work with GC Strategies, and GC Strategies will be the entity who will subcontract our work. So
okay. So just sorry, let me just make sure I understand. So all of the first part is true. Then when it comes to contracting, you were told by CBSA contracting body that you'll be working with GC Strategies. With GC Strategy, they came to you and said, now you're going to be a subcontractor to Dalian.
Well, GC Strategies just came and said that this is how the contract was done, so but that is correct.
Yeah.
CBSA
okay.
we were supposed to be the subcontractor of GC Strategies, but then Dalian showed up out of nowhere.
Dalian showed up, and then we know all the numbers, and we know this 20%, etc. So thank you for that. When was the first time that you heard about ArriveCAN?
About ArriveCAN, I don't recall exactly.
Okay.
I can actually provide an answer to that. So the app that became ArriveCAN was something that Firth would regularly speak to when we were first interacting with him starting from November of 2019. He used it as an example. At the time, it was supposed to replace, those immigration cards
yes.
for border crossings, and that was eventually then turned into ArriveCAN with the groundwork that was already complete.
We have the background. So,
yes.
So you heard of ArriveCAN, not in the form that it is now, as one of the projects that CBSA was also working on regarding electronic visa processing from abroad. Okay. So when did you hear about ArriveCAN that somehow your resumes or some of the hours of resources from your company was charged to? Because that's still I'm very unclear between the relationship with the ArriveCAN, and because you're saying somehow as part of a TA something happened, and I'm trying to get clarification on that.
I think that's the confusing part for everybody of how ArriveCAN was actually built and how ArriveCAN was contracted. So ArriveCAN was built as part of a series of contracts, right? So these contracts by themselves, they were the work under these contracts were implemented through a document which is called a task authorization.
Yes.
So the same contract that was used for ArriveCAN was used to pilot Bottler. So the same standing offer, the same supply arrangement between Dalian and Cortex and government was used.
So is it fair to say there was a pool of money available, apparently, by CBSA that that contract or that transaction allowed somehow CBSA to be able to be flexible enough to use that TA number to pay for the pilot as well as the ArriveCAN. But under any circumstances, did any of your times or resumes showed up as part of the jobs for ArriveCAN?
We
Well, I
don't
think
know
we,
that,
I
actually.
think that's something that should be investigated because we don't know whether our names
so
are.
you're not sure on that?
We don't know
Okay,
about that.
Great.
Correct.
So, just want to say thank you to Ian Ball for becoming an NP supporter. Welcome aboard. And thank you everyone for over 1,000 likes. That's a record that's going to stay here for a while, I think.
Thank you very much. Can you, because of the extensive relationship they have, can you kindly forward all the documents, whether it's email, whether it's text, or whether it's your recollection of what was the conversation with CBSA around your engagement on the pilot to the committee within the agreed timeline that we've had? So you've got an extensive relationship with CBSA, which is all good and is based on trust. And we need to make sure that we establish that as well to be able to follow. So I formally request if you could submit that, and I'm out of time. Thank you.
Okay, Fox. So this guy is taking a very different approach, even though he's a liberal, than Mr. Souza. What do you think?
I'm wondering if he's one of these liberals that had gone to the media that they weren't happy with Justin Trudeau's leadership and the way the party's going. Because there was a bunch of them that just see the way that the party's going down in the polls, and we've heard from MPs that we have had contact with who have said there's infighting in this party. I wonder if he's one of them.
Could be. I think that's probably the best explanation. And I guarantee you, Sousa's like, he's just pissed inside that his quote unquote liberal colleague is actually asking for more evidence and acknowledging what they're saying, doing the opposite of what he's doing.
He could be trying to save his own skin. He could be pissed off with what Sousa's doing. Who knows?
Or this guy could see this is going to go badly, and I need to at least position myself to be on the side of I was trying to help enable it. Enable the truth to come out is what I mean.
Yeah, he wants to be on the right side of history this time.
Yeah, we'll see.
Sure.
Thank you very much.
Clear on what Mr. Joire is looking for?
Absolutely, sure.
Wonderful, thanks.
Just because I just saw it in front of me, how is it decided who gets to be on committee? The party leader gets to decide that.
And if you go to ourcommons.ca and click on the different committees, it'll tell you who's like a regular member and who's like a, I don't know the term for it, but sometimes they'll swap members in. Like Brock is one of the ones that they swap in and out on proc for when they need him and when they don't need him. There's a lot of information on ourcommons.ca. You should check it out.
Yeah. And for those asking, this is not live at a committee right now. This happened earlier today, but we are live now, obviously.
That would be 3 weeks, I believe, is the time for it.
Please, and if there's issues, please let the clerk know. We're down to the last 15. We should be able to just squeeze it in if we stick right to our times. Ms. Minola for 2.5, please.
So thank you very much to Brenda Weeb for $27.99 super chat. Thank you very much, and that's your first one. Congratulations. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup. Écoutez.
Thank you. Listen, what you've been telling us requires us to think very hard, and it takes a lot of courage to come forward as you did. Doing what you've done, noticing the irregularities, the consequences that you have experienced have been financial threats that did come to pass because you were not paid for all of your work. Your identities were stolen, were used without your consent. You experienced strange events, having emails being tracked because of the topic of the emails. It's extremely strange. It feels like we're in a different setting here. If we were in a less democratic country, maybe I'd understand a little better, but that's not the case. This is Canada. So I'd like to congratulate you for your determination, and this is what every public servant should also demonstrate. In other words, every single tax dollar should be paid out in a responsible manner.
Hear, hear.
So you took on this role even if you're not part of the government machine. So thank you. Thank you for speaking up and for holding strong. I hope you continue. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johns.
Yeah, I'm going to follow that with the same thing. I can't thank you enough with speaking truth to power. It takes a lot of courage to do that. And you really need to be recognized for that today. Did you feel or did you hear anything, Mr. Frith, or anything around that would concern you that there would be anything like fishy going on, like illegal or money moving around that wasn't documented or anything like that?
Well, Mr. Firth literally told us that this is for more than just for credit for Mr. McDonald. So, I mean, take what you will from that.
Okay.
So that implies that our theory of Mr. McDonald getting kickbacks from GC Strategies may be correct. So what she said is, first said that, this is going to be for more than just credit for Mr. McDonald. Meaning,
Possibly for money.
possibly for, he's going to get a kickback percentage as part of the contract and part of the money that came through. So, there you go.
Ms. O'Gorman testified and Mr. Ozowski the other day. Do you have any thoughts or concerns or maybe any comments about their testimony that should be further examined?
Well, I actually have, we both have very serious concern about the testimony that President O'Gorman made 2 days ago. She specifically mentioned that the CBSA is working with the RCMP to obtain Bottler's records. This is to us, this is a very alarming attempt of obstructing justice. CBSA is not entitled, they should not interfere with the RCMP investigation in this matter, and I urge them not to basically interfere in any matter or request any kind of records from the RCMP. I confirmed with the RCMP, and RCMP told me that the CBSA is not going to receive any records with respect to Bottler that are under criminal investigation unless those records are going to be part of a judicial proceeding. So we are very concerned of the kind of role that the CBSA may play in this investigation.
Well, hopefully the RCMP are listening to today's testimony and they have a change of mind.
There you go. Thank you very much to Richard C. I'm not going to butcher your last name for $27.99 super chat. Thank you very much. Very much appreciated. Wow. So they're concerned about the threat of the CBSA trying to obtain Bottler's records in order to obstruct justice. It's crazy, folks. Crazy.
You know where Mr. McDonald is, and do you know if he's had a promotion lately or anything like that?
He received, I believe, a promotion, and he's now the Assistant Deputy Minister of Public Health, and I think he's in charge of the entire COVID task force, I think.
Can you speak a little bit more about your thoughts on that?
Well,
just briefly.
It's difficult to see that people who were openly committing acts that are frauds on government would be rewarded, I would say.
100%, Ritika, 100%. This guy got a promotion. Promotion
for stealing your tax dollars,
yeah,
allegedly.
And taking some kickbacks as a result of it, probably. So, disgusting.
That is well summarized. Thanks very much. Ms. Kusi, we should be able to get in 5 minutes, please.
Okay, thank you so much. So it should be evident to everyone in this room, as well as Canadians, that there is systematic corruption within this government. It should be absolutely evident after this meeting and your testimony here today. Previous to today, we had identified identity theft, fraudulent forged resumes, contractual theft, fraudulent billing, price fixing, and collusion. And you've given evidence of all of that today, and you're going to provide further evidence, thank you, with the documents that have been requested. We saw that these three companies, which we've referred to, received $80.3 million last year alone. If we're looking at just the ghost contractor that you referred to in the first round, in which we determined the definition of and defined GC strategies of, they received $43.6 million in the last 3 years. Taxpayers were frauded potentially $43.6 million. They were frauded this huge amount of money. So in my opinion, there is no doubt that there is systematic corruption that exists. But my question to you is, why is this happening after everything you've been through? Why do you think this is happening?
Well, I believe the only reason that ghost contractors exist is to funnel the funds into accounts that are not traceable. That's the only logical reason. It's very difficult to understand how this government contracting work, but what we realized is that it's more difficult to do things the wrong way than actually doing things the right way. The right way is very, very strict, but the way that these contracts are being awarded are completely awarded by design. And you mentioned the figure $43 million. That's what we know.
I was just going to say, that's what you know. So that $43 million, guarantee you this is what he's about to say. I haven't seen this yet. What he's about to say is that 43 million is what we know that's on paper from the government as a direct contract to GC Strategies. The problem is that they are a ghost contractor, we know on at least one occasion, where they're getting money from Dalian that isn't on the public record. So no doubt it's going to be a lot larger than that.
The whole point of having ghost contracts is the amount that we don't know. So we really don't know how these contracts with other vendors that we don't even know yet have been funneled through GC Strategies. We don't know. Maybe GC Strategies received $46 million on paper, but maybe GC Strategies received $10 billion from all different sorts of professional services that we are not aware of because we don't know. He's a ghost. So I think that's the only reason, again, for me is untraceable, basically, use of public funds.
And how do you think that this could possibly be happening in the public service? What would be the incentive for public servants? I was a public servant for close to 15 years. In fact, I was a management officer. I was a procurement officer at Global Affairs. There were very strict guidelines you had to follow for procuring services, for receiving those services, for verifying you received those services, for paying for those services. What would be the incentive for anyone in the government of Canada? Public servants are known, I'd say Canadian public servants are known for being hardworking individuals committed to this country. What on earth would cause a few bad apples to act in this manner, to act this way?
She's fishing. She's not looking for an answer she doesn't know. She knows exactly what she wants to get the answer from. And again, it's probably something related to, well, people above them, allow it to happen, or, people above them, facilitate the type of corruption that can, that's what she's looking for. Again, trying to relate it back to the Trudeau cabinet. A couple super chats came in. Thank you so much. Neil from the Hill, $17.76 super chat. And the world burns. Trudeau was arrested in 2020. And from Non-Precision at $27.99 super chat. I hope your channel continues to grow. I hope Frau Freeland doesn't fight. Frau Freeland doesn't fight it. Yeah, indeed. Otherwise, we'll be sitting in front of committee like Bottler, right? So that's one way to learn our identities. Anyway, thank you very much for that.
There are actually few bad apples. Public service, as you mentioned, it's absolutely a very tiny faction within our public service. And I believe there are two reasons. One is personal benefit, and second is extortion. If you do something wrong and you have basically something compromising on yourself, And I believe these could be the main two, either extortion or personal benefit. I think personal benefit is something that could be the cause of this.
And how do you think this is happening? How is this happening that there is this lack of oversight that allows these incredible amounts of funds to just go missing from Canadian taxpayers' pockets? How is this happening? Do you think how is this happening?
Well, that's our question too. We really don't know, and it's very difficult to believe that this system is designed in a way that this shouldn't happen. Actually, what I'm seeing with all this subcontracting is that the system, unfortunately, is designed for this to happen.
And if I may add to that, the only reason that ghost contractors and contractors like the ones that we were discussing today are able to operate as they do is because they have the support from factions within the government. If they did not exist, I do not believe that we would be seeing such egregious disrespect of taxpayer dollars without that internal protection.
So the government is allowing this ghost contracting to happen?
Yes, that's correct. Factions within the government are allowing this.
That's the answer she was looking for. That's the answer she wanted. That's the answer she got. Question period tomorrow is going to be interesting, everybody.
That's why we wanted to get this out tonight, so that because we know question period tomorrow is going to reference this.
Thank you, Ms. Kusi. Ms. Atwin for 5.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll be splitting my time with my colleague. So I just want to be clear, as we talk about, CBSA being the one sending Mr. Ferguson, you have to go through GST strategies coming from CBSA, that this is a department officials. It's not ministerial staff that's directing you. Is that correct?
This is Mr. McDonald, mostly.
Okay.
This is damage control to try to create the separation between Trudeau's cabinet and the actual public agencies with non-elected officials. So, the Liberals see now where this is going. They are trying to distance themselves from this now and say, no, it wasn't us. It was isolated within the agencies.
And if I could just go back to my question before we had our time cut off, where does Cordex come in? So again, I understand, Dahlia, where does Cordex come into this?
Oh, she should have read the article. Okay. For those of you that haven't watched our video, Cordex and Dalian, they are 2 separate companies. Government bids, you need at least 2 companies. They can bid on the contract. The problem is that Cordex and Dalian are both located at the same address. Not only are they located within the same address, they're located within the same office. Not only are they located within the same office, they share the same employees.
And the same fax number.
And the same contact numbers. They operate as one company when they need to, as 2 companies when they need to. So when they're bidding on something, if they're the only 2 bidders, well, that company is getting the contract. So it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if it goes to Cordex, doesn't matter if it goes to Dalian. They both win.
Would you like to
I can take it. So from what we understand, that when you have contracts, you have both Dalian and Cordex are separate entities, but they also operate in joint venture. And from what we believe, the reason that they operate in joint venture is so that with Dalian's alleged original Aboriginal ownership, they can go after Aboriginal contracts, because now there's more than 51% ownership that is Indigenous or Aboriginal.
Mm-hmm. So Cordex is they're just a partner and they can come in under that same...
Well, all the work is actually conducted by Cordex. I believe Dalian is just there in name and on the letterhead, but the actual interactions and the day-to-day work and the running of the business is through Cordex. And as I believe that the Globe has verified, they operate out of the same office. They have the same staff.
And the invoices were issued by Dalian. So
They're on the letterhead.
They're on the letterhead of Dalian.
So remember, Dalian is technically legally owned by an indigenous entity. That gives them an automatic leg up on every single other company competition when it comes to government contracts, because governments prefer to give contracts to Indigenous organizations. So Dalian is technically owned by Indigenous entity. They automatically get the contract. They do no work. They pass it over to Cordex. which is essentially the same company. Fraud.
And my personal resume that I validated that has been forged is on both of their letterhead. So it's Dalian and Cortex letterhead.
And just, I wanted to go back as well to the testimony around emails being hacked and deleted, and kind of the technology that you developed to kind of source that. Can you provide that evidence to us as a committee to kind of prove those allegations?
So we're also currently investigating that, but it was a third-party solution called MailTrack. They are a well-known service provider. And through MailTrack, we were able to see that at times that both Mr. Morv and I were together and neither of us were on our phones or laptops or any other devices, we were getting notifications that very sensitive information and emails were being read first by me, but we knew that it was impossible that it was being done by me. So I believe that we would have to involve MailTrack in this investigation. And they are an independent company. I'm not sure how that would work out. I think there's a little bit more to figure out on that side, but in principle, yes, we would be willing to share.
And on my end, I have a list of IP addresses that are under my personal investigations, and I can provide them to you.
Okay, thank you. I'll turn it to Mr. Talley.
Thank you. I'd like to quickly go with about 2 minutes remaining. I'd like to go to the enterprise rollout that you talked about. Now, I'm going to tell you what my understanding is, and you can correct me so we can be on the record. So, Butler was told that the application that the pilot was developed for now can be rolled out across the enterprise to the CBSA.
Like 10 times.
And CBSA would be technically charging $68 per license, of which $40 comes to Butler, and $28 of that will go to GC, that potentially might follow the same convoluted thing that goes to Dalian. And again, is my understanding right?
Yes and no. So essentially, when we were contacted for a Government of Canada project. So it was the pilot for the CBSA was an ends to, like a means to the final end, which was the enterprise rollout. That was always the goal of the CBSA, to be the pathfinder that rolled out the solution for Bill C-65 to the entire government. Our standard price was $60 per user per year. GC Strategies said he would add 20%, but in fact added a 30% markup to that suggested price. That brings it to $78. Okay. The CBSA would then use their own procurement vehicles. I believe they said that they wanted to put out an ACAN, and the reason being that they could add an infinite amount of funds to that ACAN, so that they would then be able to sell that markup, whatever they were to add on top of $78.
Once you realized that, you felt uncomfortable and saying there's something wrong here, and then you reported it.
Well, we reported a whole range of different activities, but we never even got to that point of the ACAN. But that was one of the concerns, that one of the red flags that we had. So as Emir mentioned, we went to go get our fingerprints done, and we were asked for a requesting letter. Because we didn't have it, we called Firth. And
no, I realize that. But you were concerned that you're developing an application. And just correct me, was that $68 that you
Our price was $60. GC Strategies wanted to make it $78, and he told us on the phone that Tony Utano has found a vehicle for the CBSA to sell it to the rest of the government.
You were uncomfortable, so you were planning to report this as a wrongdoing as well.
That was one of the issues. We wanted to go to the CBSA and have a direct contract, and we actually had a vehicle that the CBSA could have contracted from Butler directly at that time.
And save that. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Dutt, Mr. Morv, thank you for your very, very valuable time with us. It's greatly appreciated. Colleagues, unless there's anything else, we are adjourned.
Wow, I don't think they usually clap for witnesses.
Well, I'm sure that was the Conservatives. I'm sure that was the Bloc, and might have been the NDP as well.
Yeah, because again, this is significant. These two people are heroes, and they're going to blow the lid off of everything.
Yeah, all the evidence they're bringing forward, and it's prompted the committee to get other evidence. Holy moly. This is insane. And if there's ministers' names on those ATIPs, on those documents, holy moly, folks, this is going to blow the government wide open. You know, we thought the NDP were going to use the pharmacare bill to justify the severing the non-confidence agreement and calling an election. I'd be happy to admit I was wrong, because they may do it just to distance themselves from the ArriveScam scandal.
Well, and the only thing I hope, and I don't want to like put this bug in everyone's ear and say like, yes, this is absolutely going to happen. But the only thing I hope is that they don't try to prorogue Parliament, because if that happens, then all the work in committee, all the bills that are currently in the House, everything just stops and dies.
The only positive thing that would continue to happen is the RCMP investigation.
That's true.
That's the only positive thing. So that is immune to Justin proroguing Parliament. So the fact that that has begun, that's a good sign. But we'll see what happens. But thank you everyone for sticking with us, all 632 plus. This was a long one. We warned everybody it was going to be long. I know Fox is really tired, wants to go to bed. This was a 3.5 hour stream, longest one yet. Thanks to everyone who stuck with us. Thanks to everyone for the contributions, the donations, the gifted memberships. You all are fantastic. I hope you enjoyed yourselves. I'm sure you would have dropped if you didn't. But hope we did a good job explaining things. Hope you learned some things, and I hope we provided a little bit more clarity on this scandal. And we're continuing to follow it, and you can bet if there's any new developments, we are going to bring them your way with our in-depth commentary. So stay tuned. But join us tomorrow on Clyde's stream. Join his stream right when it starts at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We'll be called in probably around 10:30, and then join us for our weekly live stream, which is as scheduled on Sunday at 9:30. So thanks everybody for joining, and you have a good night. Go get some sleep. Don't be doing anything silly on the way to work tomorrow, like falling asleep.
Okay, good night, everybody. Thanks for coming out.